The woman was begging her husband not to abandon her. Her daughter outside the door learned the reason. Another woman had swallowed pills to kill herself for her father. As a result, the husband insisted on going out to save the woman for his lover. The wife was completely devastated. She rushed out recklessly. The daughter followed closely behind. The man glanced at the rearview mirror and showed no intention of stopping. The wife was like a mad woman, her mind a blank. She rushed into the street without caring about anything, but she accidentally got into a car accident. The girl was terrified, and tears streamed down her face. She begged her mother to open her eyes. Fortunately, she didn't lose her life. The woman then suddenly pulled out the divorce agreement. The man refused. He swore he had cut off all ties with the other woman. He kept saying he only loved his wife. However, the woman was firm in her decision to divorce. Otherwise, she would sue him in court and have them both go to jail. Their high school senior daughter couldn't forgive her father. He had destroyed their happy home with his own hands. From today onward, she hoped her father would never show his face again. Time flew by. Bona, who didn't trust men, married her middle school classmate Yoon-soo, who had been pursuing her. However, after 3 years of marriage, Bona still hadn't conceived. They had no choice but to go to the hospital for a checkup. Strangely, Yoon-soo insisted it wasn't his problem. On their wedding anniversary, Bona expressed her gratitude. Because of her father, she had become very suspicious. It was your unwavering love that gave me confidence in life. Yoon-soo hesitated. He pulled out 3 plane tickets, asking his wife to take her mother-in-law and younger sister on a trip as a wedding anniversary gift. He would stay home to watch the store. And so the 3 set off on their flight to Bali. Coincidentally, her father Hundu was on the same flight. Julie, the younger wife who was 20 years his junior, wanted her husband to do everything for her. Hundu reluctantly helped her take off her high heels. Julie then felt her face was to dry. She gestured for him to take out the spray and spray her face. Just as he finished, her mother-in-law Crystal, who was 9 years older than him, saw this and also wanted to spray her face. Their 8-year-old daughter Zira also started demanding to spray. Hundu, at his age, was nearly driven mad by these 3 women. He had been so happy before but didn't know how to cherish it. Now it was too late for regrets. His wife Miran was kind and gentle. Bona was obedient and understanding. Seeing the flight attendant who was around the same age as his daughter, he couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo, who had said he would watch the store, received a text message with an ultrasound image. He immediately turned off the power and posted a notice on the door saying the store was temporarily closed. Unaware of this, Bona still thought her husband was working hard at the store. Jinhee never expected her to be vacationing at the same hotel as her ex-husband. Julie always complained that her husband was old-fashioned. Why doesn't he dye his gray hair? Her mother-in-law scolded her daughter for not finding a younger man. Dong-woo, the unmarried younger brother, couldn't help but laugh. Seeing his mother and sister, he became even more afraid of marriage. On the other side, Miran saw her daughter sleeping soundly and decided to go to the hot springs with her younger sister Misu first. Miran, who was applying a face mask, didn't recognize Julie, who had ruined her marriage years ago. They exchanged a few words before leaving. She felt like the voice sounded familiar. When Bona woke up, she went to the massage room to relax. Just as she took off her bathrobe, the door suddenly opened. The two looked at each other in awkward silence. She quickly tied her clothes, thinking the other was a peeping Tom. Dong-woo saw there was no way to explain and immediately fled. Bona didn't chase after him. Instead, she saw her father in the pool playing with his young daughter. They hadn't had any contact in 10 years. They had cut off all ties since the day of the divorce. Bona's tears welled up in her eyes. Dong-woo saw this and was so scared that he thought she was crying because of him. He kept explaining. Watching Bona's departing figure, Dong-woo felt very guilty. Bona returned to her room and learned that her mother was going to attend the dance with her aunt tonight. She wanted to stop her but couldn't find a reasonable excuse. Her mother was so happy for once. Bona thought that the resort was so big that she probably wouldn't run into her father. At the dance, someone played Miran's favorite song. Misu pulled her to dance. Hundu hugged his wife, but his heart was filled with memories of the past. A woman who could be satisfied with just a wrecker, yet he had lost her. His wife's reminder snapped him out of his thoughts. Unintentionally, he spotted his ex-wife. Miran looked panicked and hurried back to her seat. She had no desire to stay there anymore. Hundu made an excuse to push his wife away. Unfortunately, he didn't catch up with her. In his disappointment, he saw the wallet she had left on the table. The waiter rang the doorbell to return the wallet. To his surprise, Hundu had followed him. Bona hated him. She had lost her father 10 years ago. Don't have the nerve to show up in front of us. After yelling at him, she ran out crying. Hundu knew he had caused great pain to the mother and daughter. He had no right to inquire about their well-being. After her ex-husband left, Miran saw the phone number he had left behind. She clenched it in her hand, intending to throw it away, but thinking of her daughter, she hesitated. In the morning, Hundu was awakened by a nightmare. He kept calling out Bona's name. This made him feel uneasy. The spoiled Julie was in a hurry to go out for breakfast, but she told him to pack his luggage and prepare for the evening flight back. Meanwhile, Bona, who had just returned from a trip, couldn't get in touch with her husband. She was puzzled because he had promised to pick her up at the airport that morning. With no other option, she took a taxi to the shop. To her surprise, there was a notice on the door announcing the closure of the business. Miran picked up the newspaper lying on the ground. After checking the date, she was shocked to discover that her son-in-law had closed the business the day they left for their trip. Donna couldn't help but feel anxious. She rushed back home. The bedroom was in complete disarray. Miran found her son-in-law's phone in the living room. Donna could no longer remain calm. She was worried that something had happened to her husband. However, Mi-soo had a bad feeling. She felt that Jung-soo had planned his escape. The family's savings book was also missing. Donna interrupted her speculation. She firmly believed in her husband's character. They had known each other since they were teenagers, and had been deeply in love since they got married. How could her husband deceive her? She then went to the police station with her mother to report the incident. After listening to their story, the police said there were only two possibilities. One was that he owed high-interest loans. Donna vehemently denied it. They had no debts. The police said then it must be that the man had a mistress. Donna denied it again. Miran also testified that her son-in-law had always been very kind to her daughter. After reporting the incident, Donna grew even more anxious. Looking at the photo of her and her husband, she couldn't hold back her tears. At that moment, her husband called. She excitedly opened it to find a text message from the insurance company. "Your insurance cancellation fee has been transferred." Donna was confused. She immediately contacted the insurance agent. The agent informed her that her husband had personally handled it 3 days ago. That was the day she went on her trip. All signs pointed to her husband secretly transferring their assets, so she arranged to meet the agent to ask what her husband had said. The woman looked embarrassed, thinking that the couple had already divorced, because generally, when a couple divorces, they start by canceling the insurance. Donna suddenly remembered that her husband had asked her about divorce a week earlier, but she dismissed the thought, thinking it was impossible. How could one person handle a divorce alone? But she still felt uneasy, so she called her mother and rushed to the household registration office to retrieve her records. The information was like a bolt from the blue. She had been divorced unilaterally. That doesn't divorce require both parties to go to court for notarization. The staff carefully verified the information and confirmed there were no issues. It stated that on July 21st, the couple had personally gone to the Civil Affairs Bureau to handle the procedures. Donna couldn't take it and fainted on the spot. She didn't know her husband had meticulously planned everything. He had found someone who looked exactly like his wife to deceive the judge and complete the procedures. Meanwhile, Yun-soo, who had just divorced, couldn't wait to share the good news with his lover, Hee-soo. He puckered his lips, expecting a reward, but Hee-soo suddenly slapped him. She blamed him for coming too late. If he had been 1 day later, she would have been forced by her brother to have an abortion. Meanwhile, Donna, unaware of what had happened, was still worried about her husband. She went back and forth between the Civil Affairs Bureau and the court every day, demanding an explanation. The staff had lost patience. They told her to hire a lawyer to sue for the divorce to be invalidated. Meanwhile, Dong-woo's ex-girlfriend, In-young, had tracked him down to his home to return the luxury gifts. Since she couldn't force him to marry her, she decided to destroy them instead. They had only been dating for 3 months, yet she had already spent 2 billion won. His mother was furious. She grabbed Dong-woo and scolded him harshly. She then cut up all his credit cards. She declared that he wouldn't receive a single penny from the family unless he got married. As a lawyer, Dong-woo had no choice but to fend for himself. His assistant helped brainstorm ideas. Why not take on cases others refuse? Like divorce disputes, Dong-woo instinctively resisted, but seeing his employees' pitiful expressions, the kind-hearted man relented. Donna accidentally became the law firm's first client. The assistant exaggerated the firm's achievements. Hearing the client enter, Dong-woo immediately pretended to make a call, as if he were very experienced. Donna's heart settled a little. Dong-woo turned around and was stunned. Donna thought, "Isn't this the pervert who was spying on me earlier?" Dong-woo hurriedly stood up to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. Donna didn't listen and ran away as if avoiding trash. She found the elevator to slow and took the stairs. Because she had been searching for her husband, she hadn't rested well for days. Her unsteady appearance was noticed by Dong-woo. He was about to show concern but was pushed down the stairs. Later at the hospital, Dong-woo mistakenly thought he had injured his eye. He kept shouting that he couldn't see anything. Donna was terrified and didn't know what to do. It wasn't until the doctor removed the bandage that he slowly calmed down. He then showed her a photo of his ex-girlfriend to explain why he had barged into the massage room. In short, he wasn't a thug. Donna temporarily set aside her prejudices. After paying the treatment fees, she wanted to leave, but the thoughtful Dong-woo insisted she stay for a nutrient injection. What if she fainted again? His various attempts to please her were all to keep her as a customer. After some counseling, Donna perked up again. In such a lawsuit, the first step was to find the man. Donna naively believed that her husband must have had some unspoken reasons for doing this. Her mother, however, was filled with anxiety. She feared her daughter would endure the same pain she had. Dong-woo carefully reviewed the documents she submitted. He was certain it was her husband who had betrayed her. On the other side, Julie often complains about her husband being too old, and doesn't allow him to work overtime or stay up late, and certainly doesn't let him wear reading glasses. Hundu vents about his wife spending too much money, which forces him to work overtime to support the family. Julie complains that she works hard too, and that her mother-in-law has cancelled her credit cards, leaving them to rely solely on his salary to get by. Facing his wife's whining, Hundu tries to be understanding. Hundu suppresses his inner disgust and helplessly says he'll work harder to earn money. Hundu suddenly recalls his ex-wife, who would be happy all day just by buying her favorite album. Feeling depressed, he sits by the roadside drinking to drown his sorrows. His younger brother-in-law Dongwoo happens to pass by. As they chat, he mentions a case he's handling about a woman who was deceived by her husband into divorcing him. She naively believed he had some valid reason. Hundu never would have guessed that the fool Dongwoo was talking about was his own daughter. The mother and daughter had such similar fates. Their sincere hearts had both been betrayed by scum. The next day, Dongwoo retrieved the surveillance footage from the divorce notarization office. It was clear that the man had found a woman who looked similar to her and deceived the judge. He also discovered that her husband had sent this photo to someone. The person in the photo was dressed exactly like the woman in the footage. Therefore, he suspected that the owner of the phone number was an accomplice. Following the clues, he quickly found the address of the accomplice. The lawyer feared Bona would get upset and told her to wait downstairs. At that moment, Yoon-soo was negotiating with the black broker and must not let any information leak out. He also had to delete all the relevant documents. The appearance of a stranger interrupted their conversation. Dongwoo showed the photo and asked if they recognized Yoon-soo. Yoon-soo, who was nearby, was terrified when he found out that the man was his wife's lawyer. The broker quickly sent the lawyer away. He then signaled to Yoon-soo to run away. He ran downstairs in a panic. When he looked up, he saw Bona. Bona was very excited to see her husband. She felt that he must have something to say. Yoon-soo turned his back and dared not face his wife. Bona pleaded with her husband to go back and explain. Yoon-soo angrily pushed his wife away and begged her to let him go. He then pushed his wife down and ran to a taxi. Bona chased after him frantically. She thought of her mother's tragic experience and slowly slowed her pace. Dongwoo quickly found her backpack she had left behind. He then found Bona, who was in a daze. Bona told him that the man she had just seen was her husband. Meanwhile, Miran went to the hospital where her ex-husband worked for a physical examination. She had been feeling pain in her chest recently. After changing into her clothes, she waited for the ultrasound. Hundu walked in. The two did not look at each other. While working, he asked about the patient's condition. Miran found the voice familiar. She sat up and pulled off the other person's mask to discover that it was her ex-husband. Feeling embarrassed, she hurriedly fled. Hundu ignored the stares of those around him and chased her to the changing room. Finally, he waited until his ex-wife had changed her clothes. He insisted on finishing the examination first. Miran was a note and told him to leave her alone. After an argument, she hurriedly fled. That night, Julie changed into sexy pajamas and waited for her husband to come home. Hundu had forgotten about their earlier agreement to come home early. He was distraught, holding his ex-wife's medical report. More detailed tests were needed to determine the severity of her condition. He waited until midnight, but her husband still hadn't returned. Julie downed a glass of red wine. Her mother was terrified by her appearance. Julie complained that it was because her mother always criticized her husband for being too old, that he didn't want to come home. Her father, Kun-nam, wanted to mediate, but dared not speak without his wife's permission. Julie hugged her father tightly, feeling sorry for him. It was already 2 a.m. Hundu had just returned home and was scolded by his mother-in-law again. The only person he could talk to was his younger brother-in-law. Dongwoo asked his brother-in-law if he believed in love that never changes. Recently, a female client had been causing him a lot of trouble. She had been cheated by her husband and left with nothing. Yet she still trusted him foolishly. Hundu fell into deep thought. Little did he know that the woman Dongwoo was talking about was his own daughter. The next day, Bona came again to urge Dongwoo to find her husband quickly. As she spoke, her emotions got the better of her. She then sat alone in the corner and cried. When she saw Dongwoo approaching, she quickly wiped away her tears and apologized to him. Dongwoo couldn't understand why she was so determined to find that man. Even if she won the case, what would that accomplish? He urged Bona to let go and move on, but Bona refused to give up. Following the clues, they arrived at the airport. Suddenly, she heard a familiar melody. Following the sound, she finally found her husband. Yoon-soo was so shocked he tried to flee. Dongwoo rushed forward and pinned him to the ground. He pulled out the divorce annulment lawsuit. Don't even think about escaping abroad. On the other side, Ki-soo wouldn't let Bona take the luggage. She claimed it belonged to her man. Bona was so angry she slapped her. The scoundrel reluctantly followed them back. Bona tried to beg and plead to win him back, but Mi-soo, with her hot temper, didn't care. She immediately beat the scoundrel senseless. Bona knew who that girl was, a 22-year-old exchange student who used to frequent their shop. Yoon-soo explained that he knew Bona wouldn't divorce him, so he had no choice but to do this. The aunt was furious and wanted to hit him again. Miran thought her son-in-law was heartless. The shameless Yoon-soo knelt on the ground and defended himself, saying Hee-soo needed his protection. Bona ran out of the bedroom in tears. Her mother followed to comfort her. She didn't want her daughter to persist in this relationship. Sometimes letting go is the best solution. Unfortunately, Bona couldn't understand. The next day, she invited Hee-soo to a cafe. Facing her arrogant rival, she should have grabbed her hair and given her a good lesson. Unfortunately, the scene was just her imagination. Before Bona could retaliate, Hee-soo bluntly stated that Bona was infertile. Then she touched her pregnant belly. Hee-soo said, "You should know that Yoon-soo really loves children." Bona suppressed her anger and demanded proof that the child was his. Before she could finish, Hee-soo poured a glass of juice on her. Hee-soo wouldn't allow anyone to insult her child. Bona grabbed her arm. Trying one last desperate struggle, Hee-soo arrogantly says, "You wouldn't dare hit a pregnant woman, would you?" Bona stands there, sobbing uncontrollably. Dong-woo, who has been waiting outside, rushes in. He pulls out a handkerchief to wipe Bona's face. Bona cries, saying she doesn't want to go home. Dong-woo takes her to his own villa. He opens the suitcase his ex-husband left behind. Bona saw the love letter her husband had written to Hee-soo and immediately began crying and screaming throughout the room. Facing the hysterical Bona, Dong-woo could only hold her tightly. After crying, Bona decided to take revenge. She gave up the divorce lawsuit and decided to sue her husband for forgery of a notary public document. Yoon-soo was very panicked when he saw this. That day, Bona returned home to find the house in complete disarray until her ex-husband emerged from the bedroom with the arrogant Hee-soo following behind him. Bona ordered her to get out immediately. Yoon-soo comforted his girlfriend and told her to leave first. Hee-soo reluctantly slammed the door shut. Bona scolded Yoon-soo for being too cruel and for bringing this woman here. Yoon-soo felt that Bona's criminal accusation was equally excessive. Bona felt that she had given her heart to the wrong person. When the conversation turned to the painful topic, Yoon-soo scolded his wife for not being able to conceive a child. Facing the pointed fingers of those around them, he had had enough of that life. Bona couldn't help but slap him. Yoon-soo left coldly. As soon as he stepped out, Hee-soo snatched the backpack and threw it away. That woman touched her, and she finds her disgusting. Bona sits on the bed, unable to hold back her tears. The happy memories are still vivid in her mind. She can't understand why their years of love are so fragile. The next day, Dong-woo comes to discuss the compensation money. Given the current situation, she can at least get the majority of the assets. Bona signs the document without hesitation. Afterward, Dong-woo gives her a ride home. Seeing a loving couple on the side of the road, Bona couldn't help but recall the moments she had spent with her husband. She muttered to herself that her ex-husband hadn't been this bad before. Facing the foolish woman who still hadn't woken up, Dong-woo quickly pulled over and urged her to get out of the car, but he told her to leave the backpack behind. Then Dong-woo drove off immediately. Bona panicked and chased after him. In her panic, she even threw her shoes out of her feet. A moment later, Dong-woo slowly walked over. Just as he was about to speak, Bona kicked him hard. She demanded to know why he was tormenting her. Dong-woo told her that those who want to run away can never be caught, unless he chooses to stay for you. Those who change their hearts bring only pain. He then knelt down to help Bona put her shoes back on. Dong-woo encouraged her to look forward. Yoon-soo was celebrating his divorce at a bar. He was a bit worried about the criminal charges Bona mentioned. Hee-soo had already asked a friend about such cases. They wouldn't go to jail. They just had to pay a fine to fight for more of the estate. Hee-soo helped come up with a scheme. It might change the situation. Soon, Bona saw the documents sent by the opposing lawyer, indicating a willingness to settle privately. There was also an apology letter inside. Seeing Bona crying uncontrollably, Dong-woo knew this foolish woman was about to fall for it again. Sure enough, after wiping away her tears, she immediately changed her mind and offered to give her ex-husband a portion of the property. Dong-woo was speechless. He only wanted the lawsuit to end. He never wanted to see her again, but Bona called him back and said many words of gratitude, saying that it was thanks to him that she hadn't become a foolish woman. Dong-woo handed her an eye doctor's discount coupon and advised her to get her eyes checked if she had time. That day, Hundu was secretly looking at photos of his ex-wife and daughter. His tearful expression was noticed by his young daughter, Sira. She curiously asked who the sister in the photo was and why her father was sad. Just as he was feeling guilty, Julie walked in. She heard her husband crying while looking at the photos. She couldn't help but grow suspicious. Hundu tried to hide the photos, but his wife snatched them away. Upon discovering they were of her husband's first wife, she suppressed her anger and told her daughter to leave first. At that moment, Kun-nam was being tormented by his domineering wife. The loud noises wouldn't let him sleep, and she wouldn't let him sleep in a separate room. Finally, he managed to fall asleep, only to be woken up by the arguing. Julie was so angry that she tore the photo into two pieces. She couldn't accept her husband's emotional infidelity. Hundu explained that because of the divorce, his daughter had cut off all contact with him. He missed his daughter so much that he could only look at the photo. Julie suspected that her husband was meeting his ex-wife behind her back. Hundu couldn't take his wife's constant suspicion anymore. However, his angry and embarrassed expression was all seen by his mother-in-law. She had never approved of this son-in-law. She even made it clear that if it weren't for her daughter attempting suicide by swallowing pills, she would never have married her to this old man. Facing his mother-in-law's scolding, Hundu could only endure it in silence. As an experienced person, his father-in-law advised him to keep private things at the hospital and never bring them back home again. The next day, Hundu still couldn't let go of his ex-wife. Following the address on the medical record, he found the shop she was running. He pleaded with her, hoping she would go to his hospital for a thorough checkup. The situation didn't look good. The worst-case scenario couldn't be ruled out. Miran's heart sank, but she stubbornly insisted she would go elsewhere for a checkup. Hundu sat there motionless. After some thought, he rushed back into the shop. He said he was doing this all for their daughter. He couldn't let her grow up without a mother. When Miran heard the word daughter, she hesitated. What if she really had an incurable disease? What would happen to Bona, who had just divorced? Perhaps he should use this opportunity to improve their father-daughter relationship. After struggling all night, Miran finally went for a follow-up examination. She believed her ex-husband would do everything to save her. If the results were bad and she needed treatment, she hoped her ex-husband would reconcile with their daughter during that time. After the examination, Hundu scolded his ex-wife for being sick and not coming for a checkup sooner. Miran couldn't express her hardships. Earning money to support the family wasn't easy. Julie happened to arrive at the hospital. The two passed each other without noticing, but Miran accidentally met her ex-husband's mother-in-law. Crystal proudly praised her son-in-law as the best doctor in the department. Hearing the name, Miran's heart tightened. After speaking, Crystal walked toward her daughter. After all these years, she saw the woman who had ruined her marriage. Hundu was respectful in front of his mother-in-law. When he saw Miran in the distance, he felt awkward. During dinner, Donwoo complained about the case he was working on. A man had defrauded his wife for his mistress and divorced her. Crystal was outraged after hearing this. Such a scummy man deserved to be despised by everyone. Little did she know that there was one in her own family. Hundu felt awkward after hearing this. Her father-in-law tried to lighten the mood, but his wife misunderstood him, thinking he was being too lenient with the scoundrel. By the time she realized her mistake, it was too late. Her daughter was nearly driven mad by her mother's outburst. Why couldn't she think before speaking? Hundu went to the office, worried about his ex-wife's test results. The next day, Miran accidentally broke her makeup mirror while getting ready to go to the hospital. She had a bad feeling. Later, she learned from the nurse that if the condition was benign, they would have informed her earlier. Miran became even more anxious upon hearing this. She asked her ex-husband to tell her the truth about how much time she had left. Looking at his solemn expression, she couldn't help but wonder if it was even a matter of months. Hundu interrupted her speculation. Fortunately, the tumor was benign. All she needed was a minor surgery. Miran shouted with excitement. She was almost scared to death by him. As they parted, he handed her a bouquet of lilac. This made him feel a little better. After all this time, Miran had let go of her feelings. She casually tossed the flowers into the back seat. On the other side, Julie held the torn photo and asked her father who was prettier, her or Miran. The old man told her the truth, saying Miran looked dignified. Julie wasn't convinced and criticized Miran. Soon, the day of the surgery arrived. Seeing her ex-husband as the lead surgeon, Miran felt at ease. The surgery went smoothly. After waking up, Hundu started apologizing again. He felt that her illness was all his fault. He never expected Miran had already forgiven him. Facing a young girl who came to him willingly, who could resist? Hundu hated himself for being so impatient back then. He shouldn't have given up on them out of spite. He then sent his ex-wife downstairs. Unbeknownst to him, Julie also arrived at the hospital. Misu recognized her immediately as the woman who ruined her sister's marriage. She immediately called her sister to tell her. Miran, who had just undergone surgery, didn't want to cause any misunderstandings, so she chose to go downstairs via the stairs. Miran didn't understand why she had to cooperate with him. Meanwhile, Bona was also summoned by her ex-husband. Yunsu was about to become a father. He feared that Bona's resentment would be harmful to the child. He hoped to gain her forgiveness. Bona pretended to forgive him. Then, when he wasn't looking, she pushed him into the water and vented her anger. After walking away, Bona encouraged herself. She would never cry for a scumbag bag again, so she took out the discount coupon Dongwoo gave her and decided to change herself. First, she would take off her thick glasses. The surgery to correct her nearsightedness was faster than she imagined. She squinted and accidentally found the men's restroom. Dongwoo quickly recognized this stupid woman, but just smiled without saying a word. After washing her hands, Bona asked him for some tissue. When she realized he was a man, Bona screamed in fear. Dongwoo covered her mouth tightly and made her look at where they were. Bona realized the misunderstanding. Hearing a familiar voice, she took off her sunglasses and looked closely, only to discover it was the lawyer who had helped her before. That night, Dongwoo insisted on driving her home. When they arrived near her neighborhood, Bona was in a hurry to leave. Misu happened to be passing by. Seeing the lawyer, she invited him to her home as a guest to thank him for taking care of her during this time. Bona finally learned that her mother had undergone surgery. She felt extremely guilty for not noticing her mother's illness. Miran felt that she had let her daughter down by not giving her a complete family. Misu, standing nearby, couldn't stop crying. Dongwoo thought of a way to vent his pain. He took off the wedding ring he couldn't bear to part with and smashed it with all his might. Bona couldn't stop the tears from flowing. From today on, she would completely forget the past. Then she threw the wedding ring into the Han River and shouted that she would work hard to live a happy life. Watching her daughter's back, Miran covered her face with tears. Dongwoo walked over to Bona and comforted her. Bona had become radiant since her divorce. Everyone complimented her on how beautiful she was becoming. The assistant then handed Dongwoo a gift. It was a gift from a client. When he picked it up, he saw a love letter on the back. The assistant complained that the boss was seducing a woman who had just gotten divorced. Dongwoo immediately contacted Bona and told her to wait for him. When they met, Dongwoo held the gift and asked her what it meant. Bona said she was thanking him for all his help. This was just a small token of her appreciation. Dongwoo replied seriously that he was just feeling sorry for her and had no other intentions. Bona didn't understand what he meant. Dongwoo told her she shouldn't call someone else darling so casually. Bona suddenly realized this lucky flower was originally meant for her husband, so she wrote some love notes on the back. She couldn't help but laugh out loud. She then apologized repeatedly, explaining the misunderstanding. Upon learning the truth, Dongwoo was very upset. Bona told him not to misunderstand. He wasn't her type. Dongwoo became even angrier after hearing this. He told her to take the gift back. These words were overheard by his mother. Crystal thought her son was harassing Bona. An angry Bona casually threw the gift into the trash can. Crystal secretly picked it up. Seeing the sappy love notes, she mistakenly thought her son had written them. Could it be that her son has been reluctant to marry because of this woman? Back in the office, Dongwoo kept thinking about Bona's words. His mutterings and frustration were all witnessed by his mother. She cursed the girl for having no taste. That night, she began urging him to marry and arrange a blind date. Dongwoo is terrified of marriage, especially after seeing his father and brother-in-law. Crystal angrily asks her son if he plans to stay single forever. She then mentions that she saw Dongwoo rejected by an ugly girl today. Dongwoo suddenly realizes the truth, but his mother refuses to listen to his explanation. Feeling defeated, Dongwoo goes to Bona's house the next day, accusing her of giving him a gift that could be misunderstood. Now he was being forced to go on a blind date by his family. Bona thought he was so childish. Are lawyers all so petty? Dongwoo was so angry that he threatened never to help her again. Before the car had driven far, he saw Bona walking alone with heavy bags. Just as he was about to pick her up, he suddenly remembered what Bona had said yesterday. He then left angrily. On the other side, Julie did not allow her husband to contact his ex-wife, but she allows him to occasionally look at their daughter's photos. Han-do agrees, but his face betrays his guilt. He then rushes to the bank and withdraws a large sum of money without his wife's knowledge. Today is his ex-wife's final follow-up appointment. He is about to meet his ex-husband. Miran can't help but dress up. She suddenly feels ridiculous, so she wipes off her lipstick. At the same time, Julie chases after her husband to the hospital and demands his bank card. The two embrace, and Miran sees them. This woman ruined her 20-year marriage. She knows the pain all too well. After changing her bandages, Miran believes that the two of them will never had anything to do with each other again. She says thank you and is about to leave. Han-do calls her back and asks her to have dinner with him. Miran thinks it's inappropriate. Han-do insists, saying he has something important to tell her. After being apart for nearly 10 years, the two sit down to eat together for the first time. Han-do habitually cut Miran's favorite salmon for her. Soon, Sira called, urging her father to hurry home. The kind-hearted Miran was actually glad that he was doing well. In the past, she might have hated him, but not anymore. Han-do couldn't express his feelings. He had regretted the divorce every day for the past years. Then he took out a check. When Bona got married, he hadn't done anything for her. Even though it was a little late now, he still wanted to fulfill his duty as a father. Miran had kept the divorce a secret from her daughter, saying that telling her would only cause more trouble. Then the other person took out a CD. It was her favorite singer. singer. Miran almost shed a tear. Then she returned the check to the other person, saying that if he wanted to atone for his sins he should give it to her daughter himself. After saying that, she got up to leave. Hundu lingered reluctantly and asked if they could stay in touch as friends. Miran refused. She hoped they could each live their own lives without disturbing each other. Hundu stood there stunned. In truth, he had always loved his ex-wife. His current wife was merely a sense of duty. After they parted, Miran played the CD. As the melody played, memories flooded back. The deeper the love, the deeper the pain. Miran found herself crying uncontrollably. Hundu tried to let go of the past and forced himself to do things he didn't like. He accompanied Julie singing and dancing, smiling falsely the entire time. Miran tossed and turned. Unable to sleep, Misu handed her a beer. She knew why she was in pain. They met at 20 and parted ways at 41. How could the only man she had ever loved just forget her like that? That day, Crystal was again pressuring her son to go on a blind date. Hundu advised that marriage cannot be forced. As a result, he was once again mocked by his mother-in-law. On the other side, Miran and her daughter encourage each other. If marriage is unhappy, then focus on your career. Their porridge shop was about to open. Bona sent Dongwoo a text message, but he couldn't attend because his mother had issued an ultimatum. If he didn't go on the blind date, she would take back his credit card. Dongwoo had no choice but to give in. The porridge shop finally reopened. But suddenly, some thugs showed up to cause trouble. They claimed the shop was using someone else's name. The despicable ex-husband had registered the trademark first. The assistant quickly called the boss. The new shop, which had been prepared for months, was ruined in an instant. Bona couldn't take it anymore and wanted to confront her ex-husband. To her shock, today was also the day their new shop was supposed to open. She slapped her ex-husband across the face. Kisu rushed forward and scolded Bona. Miran cursed them for being immoral. The hot-tempered Misu wanted to cut the scumbag into 1,000 pieces. Kisu immediately called her brother to come over quickly. At that moment, Yunsu was still trying to justify himself, claiming that Bona was also to blame for the divorce. After all, she couldn't have children. Miran felt sorry for her daughter. They had started the business together. All the money was earned by their daughter through hard work. Besides, did he have any proof that Bona couldn't have children? Yunsu sneered. He mocked his mother-in-law for divorcing her father-in-law early. Miran was instantly enraged. As they struggled, Kisu's thug brother shouted to stop them. He then walked over and pushed her hard. Miran, who had just undergone surgery, collided with her surgical wound. She fell to the ground in intense pain. Bona was furious. She insisted on teaching the thug a lesson. The thug didn't care. At the critical moment, Dongwoo grabbed Bona's hand. You can't use violence against such people. Watching his ex-wife being taken away by the lawyer, the scoundrel felt bitter inside. The assistant was responsible for escorting Miran away. Upon arriving at the law firm, Bona burst into tears. Dongwoo scolded her for acting impulsively. If the other party got hold of any evidence, the consequences would be unimaginable. Bona felt wronged and said, I didn't ask you to come help me. Dongwoo angrily told her to leave immediately. To his surprise, Bona actually left. At that moment, Dongwoo noticed his phone and remembered his blind date. If he didn't go to the date, he'd probably be scolded by his mother again. When he stepped out, he saw Bona standing by the elevator, not leaving. He thought the woman was coming to apologize to him. Little did he know that Bona wanted to borrow money from him to take a taxi home. Back at the porridge shop, seeing the mess on the floor, Bona finally came to her senses. Her ex-husband wasn't worth holding on to. Dongwoo promised to help her figure out a way to regain the trademark rights. Bona called Dongwoo over to thank him for his help. Dongwoo smiled knowingly. This woman always made him worry. He picked up the flower basket that had been kicked over. When he looked up, he saw the claw machine. As he was trying hard to grab a toe to encourage Bona, his mother received a call informing her that her son hadn't gone on the blind date. She was so angry that she shouted at her husband. Bona then saw the doll on the table, with Dongwoo's message, saying he's always been lucky, and now he's sharing his good luck with her. Bona, who had been feeling down all day, finally smiled. On the way home, Dongwoo kept thinking about what had happened recently. He couldn't figure out if Bona was funny or cute, but none of that mattered, because his mom had already put on gloves, ready to beat him up. Dongwoo sneaked back home. His sister spotted him and started screaming, scaring him into covering her mouth, but he didn't realize his mother was standing right behind him. Crystal dragged her son into the room, hearing the terrible screams. The family rushed in to break up the fight. Dongwoo lied that he had diarrhea and that's why he didn't show up. Seeing that his wife didn't believe him, Kunnam quickly said that Dongwoo had always had a weak stomach. Hundu added that many people tend to have diarrhea in the summer. Crystal was half convinced. Dongwoo took the opportunity to pretend he was about to have diarrhea again. He then quickly ran out of the room. Hundu looked serious, as if it was indeed serious. Crystal felt deeply guilty for being so harsh to her sick son. The next day, after investigating, Dongwoo confirmed that his ex-husband had registered 5 trademarks. This meant that they couldn't use the words Jade Porridge in their store name or menu. Bona was furious. If the law couldn't wouldn't solve the problem. She might as well vent her anger first. Dongwoo advised her not to do anything foolish. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo accompanied his girlfriend to the hospital for a prenatal checkup. After hearing the doctor's words, he guessed that his girlfriend was having a son. He looked at the ultrasound report again and again, filled with anticipation for the new life about to arrive. Hee-soo, however, seemed preoccupied, as if she was hiding something. Meanwhile, Hundu was constantly thinking about his ex-wife and daughter. Back then, he used to rock his eldest daughter to sleep like this. Julie interrupted his thoughts. Just as he had put the child back in bed, she asked him if he regretted marrying her. Hundu could only brush it off casually. Julie decided to ease the pressure on her husband. She found a high-paying job as a golf instructor. She didn't notice the customer's suspicious gaze. After finishing the golf lesson, she realized something was wrong. The customer insisted on taking her out to play. Julie was scared and tried to leave. The agent held her back and said she had to pay 3 times the fee to leave. At that moment, her mother happened to arrive. He directly handed over a check for 30 million won and told the agent to get lost. Miran was experiencing chest pain. The doctor advised her to print out her medical records. With no other option, she had to go find her ex-husband. While waiting in the office, Hundo's mother-in-law rushed over. Upon seeing her son-in-law, she immediately hit him with her bag. She scolded him for being good for nothing. Her daughter had suffered so much because of him. The harsh words cut deep. Miran was utterly shocked. She had always believed her ex-husband was successful and living a happy life. Julie chased after her mother. Hundu stood there dumbfounded, believing this was all his own doing. Facing his ex-wife, he had no words to respond. Miran felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. Out of sympathy, she offered to have a drink with him. Hundu asked her not to tell their daughter about his situation. He didn't want to be the kind of father who couldn't hold his head up high. Miran told him to stop drinking. He had to face so many patients tomorrow. This reminded him of how, every time he drank in the past, Miran would force him to drink water to sober up. Why didn't he cherish such a happy life? Kunnam was a bit worried about his son-in-law. He thought his wife's behavior was too much. Crystal angrily scolded her daughter for being useless. She was always causing trouble for her. Julie sent a text message asking her husband to come home later. She disliked him snoring after drinking. After reading the message, Hundu decided to go back to the office to rest. Miran drove him all the way to the hospital parking lot. Looking at the man in front of her, she couldn't put into words how she felt. The car gradually drove away. A sense of loss washed over her. That day, Hundu, who was unaware of the situation, saw his son-in-law's appearance online. He also found out the location of their porridge shop. He mustered up the courage to go there. He witnessed his son-in-law and another woman in an intimate moment. This left Hundu confused. He walked in and asked, "Isn't this Bona's shop?" Wasn't the man at the door her husband? Ki-soo explained, unhappily, that she was the new owner of the shop, and informed him that Bona had already divorced. At that moment, Bona came to bring her mother lunch. Miran then received a call saying her ex-husband was at the shop entrance. She hung up in panic. She knew her daughter was still holding a grudge against her father and would chase him away as soon as they met. Hundu refused to say he would wait in the car. After seeing Bona leave with his own eyes, he felt a mix of emotions. He then blamed his ex-wife for keeping it from him. Miran said that even if she had told him, it wouldn't have changed the outcome. Hundu scolded her, saying that if his wife had been more forgiving of his mistakes, Bona wouldn't be in this situation now. Miran struggled to control her emotions. She accused her husband of having no right to blame her. Hundu felt sorry for his daughter and wondered what to do. Miran regained her composure and said it was all his fault. "Don't you understand yet?" Hundu left in anger. He sat alone in the car from daytime until nightfall, thinking about how he had wronged his daughter. His heart ached. At that moment, Yoon-soo was with his girlfriend, calculating today's sales. Hundu walked in. He introduced himself. Yoon-soo quickly distances himself from his ex-wife. They are already divorced. Hundu suppresses his anger and pulls out a check to buy back his daughter's restaurant. Yoon-soo counts the check and taunts him, saying that 3 million won isn't enough. Besides, isn't a doctor's income high? His shameless face is disgusting. Hundu grabs his hand and begs him to give a reasonable price. The scoundrel shook off his arm and mocked him again with a look of contempt. Unable to tolerate it anymore, Hundu punched him directly. The scene of Yoon-soo being carried out on a stretcher was witnessed by Miran. Just as she was puzzled, Hundu walked out, watching him being taken away by the police. She had already guessed the reason. Ki-soo refused to agree to a settlement under any circumstances. Hundu dared not let his family come to bail him out. Miran soon arrived at the police station. Ki-soo, with no outlet for her anger, threatened to make the other party rot in jail. On the other side, Yoon-soo, who had only suffered minor injuries, refused to leave the hospital. He intended to use this to blackmail his ex-wife into giving up the shop. Unaware of this, Bona was discussing with her lawyer how to win the trademark rights. Just as she got out of the car, a vehicle sped past. Dongwoo pulled her into his arms. the atmosphere became somewhat ambiguous. Bona felt awkward and wanted to leave. Dongwoo took the opportunity to hug Bona and tried to kiss her. At the critical moment, Bona refused loudly. Dongwoo, who had regained his senses, felt that he could never like this kind of woman. Bona thought that he couldn't really like her. Dongwoo was about to lose his mind. Bona's face kept lingering in his mind. From now on, he would stay away from that woman. Soon, Bona found out that her ex-husband had been beaten up by her father and was trying to use this to blackmail her into taking responsibility. Shortly after hanging up the phone, Miran went to the hospital room. She begged her ex-son-in-law to let Bona's father go. Yoon-soo pretended his injuries were severe and refused to compromise. Hee-soo hurriedly reminded him that there was something important to do. Then she pulled out the documents. If you want to settle this, sign this agreement. Permanently give up the trademark rights to the porridge shop. Bona, who was outside the door, heard everything clearly. She immediately rushed into the ward and tore up the agreement. She stated that she would never give up the porridge shop for her father. Then she dragged her mother away from there. Bona was furious and blamed her mother for meeting her father without telling her. She didn't want him to interfere in their lives anymore. She then went to the police station to visit her father, whom she hadn't seen in 10 years. Hundu hung his head in shame. He said he would find a lawyer to resolve the matter. Bona came over expressionlessly to give him some advice. To her father had already died 10 years ago. She was about to leave. Hundu called his daughter back. He said he couldn't bear to see her become like this. Bona choked up and said she no longer needed her father. Hundu regretted his words. Bona was already in tears. She even doubted her own fate. After calming down, Miran comforted her daughter to let go of the past. She tried to forgive her father's mistakes. Later, Yoon-soo tried to force his ex-wife to sign the documents using the scandal. Otherwise, he would post the photos of her father hitting her online. Bona wanted to refuse, but she eventually relented. Happy memories were still fresh in her mind. She had never forgotten her father's kindness. She then decisively signed the document. Dongwoo grew jealous, thinking she still harbored feelings for her ex-husband, and that was why she had abandoned the lawsuit. In a fit of anger, he took back the gift he had intended to give her. Bona chased after him to apologize, but Dongwoo refused to listen to her explanation. That day, Julie stumbled upon a savings book in her husband's office and withdrew $3 million. She was so shocked she couldn't believe her eyes. Suspecting her estranged husband had left home, she rushed home to confront her mother, blaming her for always bullying her son-in-law. Little did she know her husband had been detained for his ex-wife and her daughter. Just as he was planning to hire a lawyer to resolve the issue, Yoon-soo suddenly dropped the charges against him. The two then went to a restaurant. This was likely their last meal together. Miran had witnessed her mother-in-law's tyranny, having not returned home for 2 days. He braced himself for a scolding. Mentioning his current home, Hundu felt heavy-hearted. He opened his phone and heard numerous messages. Seeing her husband return, Julie burst into tears. She was terrified he would leave her like he did 10 years ago. The mother-in-law disapproved of her son-in-law, had even summoned her formidable younger sister Sunny back from the United States, just to deal with her son-in-law. The two sisters teamed up to pressure him relentlessly, and even produced a divorce agreement to intimidate Hundu. Julie rushed in to oppose it, refusing to divorce under any circumstances. But Crystal couldn't stand this son-in-law at all. After years of endurance, Hundu finally rebelled. He told his wife to choose between leaving with him or divorcing him. Julie shouted at her mother and aunt, and rushed out of the room. Who forces their daughter to divorce? Her husband was so angry he started cursing. The sisters were both stunned. This wasn't their plan. Hundu wanted to take his daughter with him. Although Sira didn't want her parents to separate, she still preferred to follow her father. Julie desperately tried to stop him. She even knelt on the ground begging for mercy. But Hundu is determined. Either move out or divorce. His father-in-law grabs him and pleads with him not to make any decisions in the heat of the moment. Just then, Julie, who had rushed over, accidentally falls down the stairs. Her mother is so scared she nearly faints. It wasn't until dawn that Hundu returned from the hospital carrying his wife. Family members gather around to ask about the situation. Fortunately, it's just a sprained ankle. Julie, who had been given a sedative, is sleeping deeply. When she woke up, Julie begged her husband not to leave. If they moved out, her mother wouldn't give her any more money. Seeing this, Hundu was completely at a loss, but he never would have thought that Dongwoo would fall in love with Bona. At that moment, Dongwoo was sulking alone. He thought Bona was still lingering over her ex-husband. That's why she gave up the trademark lawsuit. He went to the ex-husband's porridge shop. Hee-soo confronted him, asking why he was there. Upon Yoon-soo's explanation, Dongwoo finally understood why Bona had dropped the lawsuit. Yoon-soo noticed Dongwoo's feelings for Bona. He mocked Dongwoo, asking him to distinguish between sympathy and love. This remark enraged Dongwoo. He wasn't sure what he felt for Bona. This foolish woman always makes him feel sorry for her. He had planned to think things through before making a decision, but upon returning home, his mother's friends were already busy arranging blind dates for him. In a panic, Dongwoo lied and claimed he already had a girlfriend. Crystal suddenly recalled the girl she she had seen earlier. She went to her son's room and demanded to know the name of his girlfriend. Dongwoo glanced at a poster and blurted out Kong Lee-san. His mother took out the gift she had found earlier. She guessed it was from the girl who had insulted him. She scolded her son for having no taste. To prove himself, he went to Bona's shop and bought all the bento boxes. He even lied that Bona's lawsuit had caused him to lose many customers, resulting in him barely being able to pay his rent. Bona believed him and asked anxiously what they should do. Dongwoo said that if she really wanted to make it up to him, she had to cooperate with all his plans. The two then went to the mall to pick out a few clothes for her to try on. Bona was confused, but thinking about what she owed Dongwoo, she obediently followed his instructions. After trying on countless outfits, she finally chose one suitable for meeting elders. He then took Bona to a beauty salon and told the hairdresser the hairstyle he wanted. Dongwoo had to rush to a meeting and gave Bona the address. See you tomorrow afternoon. The next day, the mother and son arrived early at the restaurant to wait. The mother said that if she wasn't satisfied, she would continue with the matchmaking. Just then, Bona walked over. Dongwoo was speechless. Crystal accused her of being a minute late. Bona never expected that the so-called apology was to pretend to be his girlfriend. She suppressed her anger and called the lawyer aside. At that moment, Crystal saw Bona's outfit and couldn't help but approve. Before Bona could ask, Dongwoo took out his phone and took a photo of her, saying she looked at least 10 years younger. Bona refused to lie to the elders. Dongwoo pulled her back and emotionally blackmailed her. Bona could only surrender obediently. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo was holding his wedding with Hee-soo. The wedding vows sounded so ironic. On the other side, the poorly acting Bona confessed that she had no plans to marry. This statement instantly enraged Crystal. In her eyes, her son was an excellent choice for a husband. Dongwoo quickly explained that his girlfriend was currently focused on her career, and that they had to postpone the wedding for now. Just then, a mischievous child bumped into a waiter, spilling champagne all over Crystal. She was already furious, but the child's mother didn't even apologize. Bona had her own way of dealing with such people. She walked over with a glass of champagne and poured it all over the woman. This move instantly won Crystal's heart. She loved having such a daughter-in-law. Before leaving, she reminded her son to cherish this opportunity. This made Dongwoo extremely excited. Bona rolled her eyes and told him to hurry up and open the car door for her. After all, today she was Dongwoo's girlfriend. Dongwoo was overjoyed. As soon as Crystal returned home, her husband and sister rushed to ask her how it went. Crystal happily praised the other woman, saying she looked just like herself when she was young. Her husband's expression turned grim upon hearing this. Her sister, thinking of her own situation, mentioned that she had another purpose for returning to Korea. That was to find her son's girlfriend, Hee-soo. The two had once been deeply in love, but her husband had looked down on the girl's family background. Little did he know that Hee-soo had already married Yoon-soo. The brother urged his sister to forget everything from the past. The scene of the two getting out of the wedding car was witnessed by Bona. She was so angry she started cursing. Dongwoo wanted to help her turn the situation around. He forcibly pulled Bona out of the car. This time, he would pretend to be the boyfriend. Yoon-soo almost didn't recognize his ex-wife. Dongwoo wrapped his arm around Bona's shoulder and mocked the two of them. Yoon-soo couldn't believe that a lawyer would fall in love with a divorced woman. Back at the porridge shop, Bona couldn't help but cry. Her heart was in agony. She had lost everything overnight. Every day, she tried to convince herself to work hard and stay strong, but reality was far from what she had hoped for. Dongwoo came over to comfort her. After leaving, he contacted his assistant to order 100 bowls of porridge from Bona's shop every day under someone else's name for the welfare home. Business suddenly picked up. Bona was overjoyed. She thought it was all thanks to her own efforts. Dongwoo would take out his phone whenever he had a moment to look at Bona's photos. He would scold her for being ugly, but his expression betrayed his true feelings. At noon, he waited for Bona to deliver the lunch boxes. He wanted to invite Bona to eat together, but Bona was too busy to spare the time. The assistant felt sorry for the boss waiting for her every day. Bona seized every opportunity to promote the porridge shop. Unfortunately, she kept hitting dead ends. Dongwoo called her over and snatched the flyers from her hands. He quickly secured several customers. Bona was amazed. Dongwoo asked her if she was just here to deliver food. Bona said of course not. Dongwoo secretly rejoiced, but when he heard she was here to promote the restaurant, he angrily turned and left. Bona takes a long time to react, but she immediately forces herself not to overthink it. A man as good as Dongwoo wouldn't possibly be interested in her. At noon, she goes to the welfare home and finds out that the real beer is someone else. Bona asks who it is. The director doesn't know either. After thinking it over, she can only think of Dongwoo. She rushes into Dongwoo's office and confronts him, asking why he did this. Dongwoo said it was because he liked her. Bona was shocked. She couldn't believe it was true. That night, Julie suddenly saw her husband's ex-wife. She She chased after her and asked if she recognized her. Miran, of course, recognized her. She just didn't understand why the other woman wanted to talk to her. Julie asked Miran if she had remarried. Upon hearing that she hadn't, Julie assumed she was still obsessed with her husband. Miran didn't want to waste any more time. She told the other woman to get to the point. Julie was afraid her husband might get involved with her again because of the children, so she begged Miran that if her daughter wanted to contact her father, she must go through her. After saying that, she left her phone number, hoping she would understand that she was doing this to protect her family. Miran found it ironic and told her to think about how she had acted in the past. Then she tore up the phone number. Julie sat there and finally remembered the conversation from 10 years ago. Miran had begged her not to see her husband again. She had a family and children. You're still young and have many options. Julie knelt on the ground and begged Miran to step aside. Thinking back to that moment, Julie felt embarrassed and couldn't look at Miran anymore. Miran left angrily. The brief conversation brought back too many memories. Not long ago, she had refused her ex-husband's invitation. In a fit of anger, she agreed to go to the concert over the weekend. Hundu was overjoyed. Compared to Julie, he had more in common with Miran. After calming down, Miran regretted her decision. She felt she shouldn't be entangled with her ex-husband, although she still had feelings for him. What was the difference between that and Julie's situation back then? Hundu soon received a text message canceling the date. His mood plummeted instantly. Just as he was frantically replying, Julie burst in. Startled, he quickly turned off his phone. After exchanging a few words, he used surgery as an excuse to rush her out. Julie voluntarily confessed about meeting his ex-wife. She also mocked Miran for acting like an old woman. Seeing this, Hundu finally understood why Miran had cancelled the date. He immediately chased after her to the shop to apologize. He also wanted to stay in touch with Miran. Hundu never imagined that Dongwoo would fall in love with his daughter. Julie snatched her brother's phone to see what his girlfriend looked like. The family members all took a look. They praised Dongwoo for having good taste. Julie then snatched the phone again, wanting to show her husband. Dongwoo quickly stopped her and told her not to bully her brother-in-law anymore. He was very upset. He had originally found a fake girlfriend to avoid an arranged marriage, but ended up falling for her for real. Bona, who is divorced, dares not love again, and has no time to date Dongwoo. Dongwoo stops her and asks for the truth, and gives her 3 days to think about it. The waiting is agonizing. Every time the phone rings, he thinks it's Bona. This is already the 3rd day. His assistant comes over to add to the frustration, saying Bona is here. Dongwoo pretended not to care and sulked alone. He complained that she didn't even look at him once. He even threatened that if she didn't contact him by midnight, he would give up completely. Just as he finished swearing, he saw Bona running in the rain. Dongwoo got out of the car to give her a ride. Although Bona wanted to refuse, he insisted on pushing her into the car. Bona said she didn't want to date him. Dongwoo complained that she didn't check the weather forecast. He then turned on the radio to avoid discussing anything else. The two didn't say a word until they arrived at their destination. Knowing that she wanted to reject him, he didn't let her speak. It's impossible not to be moved by such an outstanding man. Bona worked late into the night. An employee asked her if she had really ended things with Dongwoo. As time was running out, Dongwoo felt heartbroken for the first time over a woman. Bona stood alone at the intersection waiting for the bus. She couldn't help but think of Dongwoo. Suddenly, she changed her mind and turned to hail a taxi. It was already midnight. Dongwoo forced himself to give up and stood up to leave. However, he left his phone on the table. As soon as he walked away, the phone rang. The two lovers passed each other at the elevator entrance. Bona gathered her courage to push the door, but found it locked. She still didn't give up. Pan knocked a few times. Then she stood by the door, feeling dejected. At that moment, Dongwoo finally remembered his phone. He turned back. When he saw Bona, he was very surprised. Bona also finally noticed him. She explained why they couldn't be together. She had been divorced. No matter how you looked at it, they weren't compatible. Dongwoo didn't want to hear anymore. He suddenly hugged Bona and kissed her. Meanwhile, Ki-soo was trying to secretly burn the photos of her ex-boyfriend. Suddenly, she heard her husband's voice. Startled, she hurriedly blew out the flame. Yoon-soo urged his wife to change her clothes. He wanted to take her out for a nice meal, but when he turned around, he smelled something burning. He picked up the half-burned photo. He couldn't help but feel confused. Little did he know that his wife was hiding a dark past. That day, she went out alone and felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Julie, who was passing by, asked if she was okay. She kindly took her back to the porridge shop. The two felt an instant connection. Julie even invited her to come to her husband's place for a prenatal checkup next time. On the day Ki-soo went to the hospital for her prenatal checkup, Sunny also followed her to the hospital. While waiting, she heard a familiar name. Turning around, she saw what seemed to be her ex-girlfriend, who had been forced to separate from her son. Ki-soo was shocked to see Sunny. Sunny grabbed her hand and said she had been looking looking for her all along. Ki-soo hurriedly explained that she had mistaken her for someone else. Sunny hurriedly chased after her but was too late. Julie appeared at that moment. Sunny was overjoyed. Her son had been devastated by a breakup. Now she had to find that woman at all costs. Ki-soo turned pale with fear. She rushed to the underground parking lot. This must not be discovered by her husband. She was restless all day. Yoon-soo was anxious and urged her to rest. Since Sunny couldn't eat, Julie took her to the porridge shop. Sunny learned that the man's wife had also studied abroad in Sydney. She pressed him about which school his wife attended. Sunny was shocked to discover that the woman had attended the same school as her son. When ordering, Ki-soo arrived. Julie quickly stood up to introduce her to her aunt. Ki-soo forced a calm expression and greeted the woman. She then deliberately spilled water on Julie. After sending everyone away, she threatened to kill herself if he didn't keep quiet. She also said she was already married. She didn't want her husband to find out about those things. Sunny saw her ugly face for the first time. She decided to keep quiet for now. While eating, Julie mentioned the purpose of her return to the country. She wanted to find her son's ex-girlfriend. She guessed that Ki-soo, who attended the same school, should also know her cousin. Yoon-soo was curious about the woman's name. Ki-soo glared at her ex-boyfriend's mother with hatred. At this point, Sunny didn't want to ruin her marriage. She was just curious whether the child in her womb was her own. Back in the car, she couldn't calm down. She then showed the photo to her niece. Julie was startled. Suddenly, they saw Ki-soo leaving. The two decided to follow her. They arrived at Ki-soo's house. Sunny asked her who the father of the child in her womb was. Ki-soo excitedly said the child had nothing to do with her ex-boyfriend. Her nervous demeanor only made people more suspicious. Sunny suspected Ki-soo was deceiving her. Ki-soo denied it vehemently. At that moment, Yoon-soo returned home. Sunny didn't want to ruin their marriage, so she hurriedly took her leave. But she had to find out who the father of the child was. Ki-soo refused to answer the phone. She had no choice but to go find her husband. She asked them when they had started dating. They said it was last March. This was exactly when Ki-soo had broken up with her son. This further confirmed her suspicions. Yoon-soo then pulled out the ultrasound results to share the joy of becoming a father. The third brother was watching at the door. He then warned Sunny that if she wanted to leave Korea alive, she shouldn't show her face near his sister again. Sunny was trembling in fear. Ki-soo lives in constant fear. She cautiously asks her husband, "If I hadn't gotten pregnant, would you have divorced her and married me?" Yoon-soo hadn't considered that. He had resolved to be a responsible father. Those words sound so ironic. Meanwhile, Bo-na is fully focused on her career. Dong-woo spends his days reminiscing about their first kiss, but Bo-na never initiates contact. He took the initiative to call her. Bo-na said she was busy and told him to go out and have fun alone. With no other option, he chased her to the store and dragged her out on a date. Bo-na said no, but the massage was too relaxing for her tired body. Dong-woo saw how tired she was and pulled her to sleep for a while. Bo-na thought she could keep going, but she soon fell asleep. Dong-woo quietly asked the masseuse to leave and gently covered her with a blanket. Dong-woo looked at his girlfriend and couldn't help but kiss her. Dong-woo, who believed in not getting married, only enjoyed the moment. He never made any promises to Bo-na. Bo-na felt a little disappointed. She secretly resolved not to invest too much emotion. In the days that followed, Bo-na's schedule was completely filled with work. She couldn't find any time to go on a date. Dong-woo threw a tantrum. He felt that the two of them weren't really in a relationship. Bo-na was afraid of love and swore never to give her all again. She also hoped that the other person would stay clear-headed. After they parted ways, Dong-woo sent her a text message. "One day, you'll forget all the pain. I'm willing to wait for that day to come." When he returned home, his aunt asked him how to fight for custody. Seeing the photo, Dong-woo was startled. Sunny speculates that Ki-soo's baby might be his son. Dong-woo is shocked and takes the photo to his room. He then calls Bo-na. He asks her what she would do if her ex-husband regretted his decision and wanted to remarry. Bo-na says she would never forgive him under any circumstances. She wonders why Dong-woo is asking such a question. Dong-woo hesitates. This only piqued Bo-na's curiosity. The next day, she followed him to the office and pestered him. She learned that Ki-soo's child might not be her ex-husband's. She covered her mouth in shock, but everything would have to wait until the child was born to be certain. Bo-na looked dazed and said she had to go somewhere. Dong-woo thought she was losing her temper and hurried after her. Now was not the time to reveal the truth. They couldn't act impulsively. Bo-na had a way to confirm whether the child was her ex-husband's. Before their divorce, the two had gone to a hospital for infertility tests. Due to the many changes they had experienced, she had never picked up the test results. The two went to the hospital together. Moments later, Bo-na emerged from the clinic, looking dazed. Ki-soo's arrogant demeanor was still fresh in her mind. She sat on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. Dong-woo walked over to comfort her. He never imagined that Bo-na's inability to conceive was due to the man's issue. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo found a burned photo in the trash. Who is the person by his wife's side? He couldn't sleep in the middle of the night. He took out the photo and looked at it repeatedly. He felt there must be something wrong with it. He then sneaked out of the bedroom to check his wife's phone. He found many missed calls. He mustered the courage to call back, but no one answered. Just as he was about to give up, the phone rang. From a few words, he recognized who it was. Fearing his identity would be exposed, Yun-soo hurriedly hung up. The next day, he asked his wife about her relationship with Sunny. Did she really not know her son? Ki-soo looked panicked and denied everything. Yun-soo, I'm willing to give up. Invited Sunny to a cafe. He asked her if his son's ex-girlfriend was his wife. Sunny didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked him why he cared so much. Yun-soo grabbed her and demanded to know her purpose. Sunny said he would find out later. Ki-soo quickly noticed something was wrong with her husband. She hurried to ask her brother for help. The next day, her brother arranged to meet the man at a porridge shop. He lied, saying his sister had never dated Sunny's son. The man was just a stalker. This incident left an indelible shadow on Hee-soo. Sunny was confused by the situation. She blamed Hee-soo for making her son fall in love. Yun-soo believed her and felt deeply guilty. The man then pulled out a jar of baby porridge. He said it was a new product developed by his ex-wife. It was very popular now. If they wanted to open more branches, they needed to find a way to get the recipe. Under the man's urging, Yun-soo secretly went to his ex-wife's porridge shop. Just as he was about to take a photo, he was caught by Dong-woo. Bo-na came running over and forced her ex-husband to hand over his phone. In a fit of anger, she said many things with hidden meanings. Yun-soo asked her what she meant. Bo-na told him to ask his own wife. Dong-woo blamed Bo-na for being too impulsive. It's still unclear whose child the woman is carrying. Meanwhile, Yun-soo keeps replaying his ex-wife's words in his mind. He then calls his friend in Australia and asks him to investigate Sunny's son's romantic history. In the morning, as he faces his wife's farewell kiss, he remains cold and indifferent. Soon, he receives an email from his friend, revealing that Sunny's son has been living with a girlfriend for 2 years. However, due to their parents' opposition, they were unable to marry. On the other side, Ki-soo was also unsure whose child she was carrying. She consulted the doctor about whether there was any way to determine the exact time of conception. The doctor was helpless. Ki-soo felt anxious and uneasy inside. Facing her former spouse, she felt no shame whatsoever. Bo-na found it ironic. Her ex-husband had abandoned his family to become a father, but he didn't know he was infertile. However, her secret was soon discovered. A photo of her with her ex-boyfriend was found on the coffee table. Yun-soo snatched the phone, then dragged his wife into the bedroom and explained what he knew. Ki-soo confesses that he was her first love. When they broke up, she almost killed herself. You saved me. She hopes her husband won't dwell on the past, but Yun-soo refuses to let it go. He doesn't understand why Sunny is still clinging to her. Ki-soo lies, saying it's because her ex can't let go of her. That's why his mother is acting this way. Unexpectedly, her husband called the other man to their home. Yun-soo placed the investigation results in front of Sunny. He forced her to reveal the reason why she was clinging to Hee-soo. Sunny did not share her suspicions with Yun-soo. She did not want to ruin their marriage. Marital issues should be resolved between the couple themselves. She stood up to leave but was stopped by Yun-soo. Ki-soo hoped Sunny would keep the secret. As the argument escalated, her brother burst in. Seeing Sunny, he rushed toward her to confront her. Just then, Ki-soo suddenly clutched her stomach in pain. The pregnant woman was rushed to the hospital. Her brother, enraged, pushed her husband out. Sunny, who had come to visit, was also blocked outside. She pleaded with the couple not to distrust each other anymore. Yun-soo refused to listen and warned Sunny that if anything happened to his child, he would never forgive her. From the very beginning, he had never doubted the child's paternity. Upon learning that his wife's placenta was unstable and she had lost a lot of blood, he hurriedly inquired about the baby's condition. After confirming there were no major issues, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. At the same time, he felt deeply guilty for dwelling on his wife's past. Ki-soo didn't know what to do. The older brother came up with a terrible plan to make Sunny disappear completely. He then forged a fake medical report to deceive Sunny. Ki-soo had a miscarriage. Sunny regretted it deeply. She was certain that Hee-soo was carrying her grandchild. Seeing Sunny approach, Ki-soo quickly covered her stomach with a blanket. Sunny sincerely apologized, hoping she would forget everything and live a good life. Ki-soo could never forgive her. Their conversation was overheard by her husband. The naive Yun-soo still believed his wife loved him. That day, Bo-na discovered her ex-husband was trying to take her business. She couldn't take it anymore and wanted to reveal his secret. The employees, afraid that their boss would be hurt, quickly contacted Dong-woo. Yun-soo was confused about what could have caused his current family to fall apart. Just as Bo-na was about to reveal her ex-husband's infertility, Dong-woo arrived and stopped her. He dragged her outside and told her not to act impulsively. Yun-soo returned home deep in thought. He kept thinking about his ex-wife's words. He felt extremely uneasy. Ki-soo noticed his unhappy expression. She pressed him to explain what had happened. Yun-soo confessed that his ex-wife had said something that could have caused their divorce. Ki-soo told her husband not to dwell on it. That woman was infertile, so she was jealous. As she turned to leave, she revealed a guilty expression. She feared that Bo-na might know something. The next day, Yun-soo bought a baby car seat. Suddenly, he decided to come home early. He saw his wife rushing out in a hurry. Curious, he followed her. He saw Hee-soo enter Bo-na's porridge shop. As soon as they met, she grabbed Bona's hand and demanded to know what she knew. Bona refused to answer. Ki-soo angrily pushed everything on the ground. She mocked Bona for being unable to have children. As a mother, she would do anything for her child. This statement instantly enraged Bona. She said she had just gone to get the test results last week. The infertility was the man's problem. Yoon-soo, who had been eavesdropping, was shocked. Ki-soo tried to continue the argument. Yoon-soo finally appeared. He believed his wife was slandering him. Bona found it amusing. She told him to call the hospital himself and ask, but Yoon-soo was like a madman, unable to believe it. At that critical moment, Dong-woo rushed over to stop them. Yoon-soo refused to admit it was his fault. He accused his ex-wife of intentionally sabotaging things. After delivering a harsh threat, he dragged his wife away. Ki-soo thought her husband didn't suspect her. Little did she know that Yoon-soo had already grown suspicious. Sitting alone in the car, he recalled his current wife. There were indeed many suspicious things about her. She kept asking if he would have married her if she hadn't been pregnant. He also understood why Sunny was so obsessed with her. It seemed like he was suspecting the child's paternity. At that moment, Dong-woo noticed that Bona's neck was bleeding from being choked by the scumbag. He was furious and wanted to confront the guy. Bona quickly stopped him. It was just blood from staying up late and working overtime. Dong-woo felt so sorry for her and quietly took his girlfriend to the hospital. Bona didn't know what he was up to. As soon as they entered, she was pinned to the bed and given amphor drip. Dong-woo stayed by her bedside the entire time. He wanted to protect the woman he loved. Meanwhile, Ki-soo had been sitting in the living room the whole time. Yoon-soo finally came home late at night. She still insisted that Bona was lying. Yoon-soo kept a stern expression and refused to listen to any nonsense. Ki-soo held her stomach and comforted herself that the child couldn't possibly be her ex-boyfriend's. The next day, the two of them went to the hospital to hear the test results. As expected, it was his problem. Yoon-soo was on the verge of breaking down. Ki-soo persistently asked the doctor if there was even a slight possibility of pregnancy. The doctor said that the likelihood was very low. This made Yoon-soo even more certain that the child wasn't his. Ki-soo caught up to him, wanting to talk things out, but Yoon-soo rejected her, saying she was dirty and not to touch him. Ki-soo couldn't believe that the man she loved so deeply could be so cruel. But no matter what, Yoon-soo refused to believe the child was his. That day, at a friend's fashion show, Julie was shocked to see Miran, whom she had once despised, walking toward her as a model. What was even more unexpected was that her husband was standing behind her, watching his ex-wife. This made Julie furious. Hundu came to the backstage to give his ex-wife a bouquet of flowers to congratulate her. As soon as he left, Julie found her designer friend Leanne to settle the score. She asked him why he hired such an old woman as a model. Leanne said she was a special guest model. Although she was older, she still had her charm. Julie was so angry her face turned red. She wanted to cut off all ties with him. At that moment, Hundu, who was preparing to leave, wanted to send a text message to Miran. Just as he was typing, Julie noticed him. Hundu stammered, not knowing how to explain. At that moment, Miran also arrived at the parking lot. The three of them looked at each other in shock. Julie was convinced that they had rekindled their old feelings. She rushed over and tried to tear into them. Fortunately, Misu arrived in time to stop her. Hundu saw this and hurriedly pulled his wife away. Miran finally realized she couldn't continue to contact her ex-husband as a friend. Misu knew her sister couldn't forget her ex-husband, but continuing this would only hurt her in the end. Julie, blinded by jealousy, went straight to Miran's clothing store the next day. She suspected Miran was doing this to get revenge. Miran didn't want to deal with her and asked her to leave. Julie threatened to spread rumors that Miran was meddling in someone else's marriage. Miran couldn't take it anymore and revealed that she had also destroyed her own family in the past. Julie was so angry she couldn't say a word and started throwing things around. Misu saw this and quickly drove her away. She then invited her ex-brother-in-law to the store. Hundu felt deeply guilty. He finally realized that his daughter had given up the store to save him. He recalled the words his daughter had once said to him. He felt deeply guilty. Meanwhile, Dona was daydreaming about the birthday surprise Dongwoo had prepared for her. Her innocent expression was all seen by Dongwoo. To her surprise, Dongwoo asked his girlfriend to treat everyone. Dona looked disappointed. While Dongwoo was in the restroom, she cursed herself for being a fool while drawing a diamond ring on her hand. Suddenly, piano music began to play. It was exactly the scene she had been hoping for. A beautiful love song and a sweet cake. After blowing out the candles, Dongwoo opened the gift, a pair of couple's rings. Dona was overjoyed. Her ex-husband had never given her such a romantic gesture. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo regretted his actions deeply. He had been sitting outside drinking every day, to develop new porridge recipes. Bona went to Incheon alone. Dongwoo missed his girlfriend, so he sneaked to the sports hall without saying goodbye. A proposal video suddenly appeared on the big screen. Bona was moved. A red sports car stopped in front of her. At that moment, Bona felt so happy. The two embraced sweetly, but Bona refused her boyfriend's proposal. She didn't have the confidence to face Dongwoo's parents. She wanted to wait until she had achieved something in her career before getting married. Dongwoo understood but still felt a little disappointed. He hoped Bona wouldn't force herself. That night, Dongwoo refused to leave. He insisted on staying to study with her. The old man thought they were a young couple and prepared a guest room for them. Dongwoo was afraid his girlfriend would refuse, so he hurriedly asked her to leave. He swore nothing would happen and told her to rest assured. In the middle of the night, Dongwoo couldn't sleep. Suddenly, he leaned over and asked Bona if she was asleep. Bona was startled and didn't know what to do. It turned out Dongwoo was too scared to go to the outhouse. The 2 days of studying passed quickly. Dongwoo reluctantly said goodbye to his girlfriend. Not long after, Yoon-soo suddenly found her. He was drunk and blamed Bona for ruining his life. Bona retorted that it was he who had proposed the divorce in the first place. Yoon-soo suddenly changed his attitude and tried to salvage the relationship. This scene was witnessed by Dongwoo, who had returned to bring something. He stopped Yoon-soo and warned him not to bother Bona anymore. Yoon-soo shamelessly called him the third party. Dongwoo angrily grabbed him and warned him again not to bother Bona, or else he wouldn't hold back. Unexpectedly, Yoon-soo said that he and Bona were the original married couple. This sent Dongwoo's mood plummeting. The next day, Yoon-soo made up his mind to divorce. His wife refused, insisting that the child was his. The sub's older brother offered 2 options. First, he could leave with nothing and give up the trademark rights to the porridge shop. That shop had been bought back with his own money. Second, they could wait until the child was born before separating. Yoon-soo no longer believed a word they said. It was they who had encouraged him to deceive his ex-wife into giving up everything. The older brother grabbed him and warned that his patience had limits. Just wait 2 months. Yoon-soo despises his wife now. He is determined to win back his ex-wife, but Dongwoo is always by Bona's side. This prevents him from getting close. He can only peek through the wall. Suddenly, he decides to follow Dongwoo. He follows him all the way to the gate of a villa in the wealthy neighborhood. He can't help but marvel that someone would like a divorced woman. He also secretly rejoiced that such a family would never accept Bona. The next day, he dug out the document. It was the guarantee letter he had forced his ex-wife to sign, permanently relinquishing the trademark rights to the rice porridge. Ki-soo curiously asked what he was doing. Yoon-soo looked impatient. At this point, Ki-soo could only endure it. Yoon-soo then went to his ex-wife's shop. Before he could speak, Bona started to chase him away. She didn't want any involvement with this man. Yoon-soo handed her the guarantee to show his determination to reconcile. Seeing Bona's indifferent expression, Yoon-soo humiliated her, saying, "A rich second generation like Dongwoo would never marry you." Bona ignored him and picked up the phone to call the police. Yoon-soo quickly snatched the phone and knelt down begging for forgiveness. On the other side, Ki-soo learned that the guarantee agreement was missing. She suspected her husband must be trying to reconcile with his ex-wife. She was about to tell her brother but feared it would anger her husband. After much deliberation, she decided to call Bona's boyfriend. She told him that Yoon-soo wanted to reconcile with Bona and asked him to find a way to stop it. Dongwoo was in a state of turmoil. Unexpectedly, Yoon-soo came looking for him to threaten him into breaking up with Bona. As he listened to the harsh words, Dongwoo couldn't take it anymore and beat him up. The scumbag started fighting back. The two of them wrestled, neither willing to back down. Bona sensed that Yoon-soo would cause trouble for Dongwoo. She rushed to the company while making a call. Dongwoo quickly gained the upper hand. He grabbed Yoon-soo by the collar and warned him that if he dared to approach Bona again, he would file a restraining order in court. He also declared that he would never give up on Bona. As soon as he left, Bona arrived at the parking lot. Yoon-soo mocked Bona for being so lucky. Bona was worried that Dongwoo had been injured because of her. Yoon-soo shouted that one day she would cry and come back to him. Bona finally found Dongwoo. She saw the wound on his lip. Dongwoo pretended nothing had happened. Bona cried and said she was sorry. She felt responsible for his injuries. The two embraced tightly. Dongwoo then went to the office to tend to his wound. He knew it wouldn't be easy for them to be together. Bona understands that no parents would accept a divorced woman as their daughter-in-law. The two swear that no matter what happens, they will not back down. But Dongwoo never imagined that his brother-in-law and Bona are father and daughter. He hopes his mother will tone down her temper. Otherwise, no one will dare to marry into such a family. Hundu wanted to compensate his daughter. Because his ex-wife refused to accept the check, he had no choice but to find Misu and ask her to help deliver it. Miran was furious when she found out and scolded her sister for taking the money. If his wife found out, there would be another uproar. She had intended to return it immediately, but happened to see the couple looking so affectionate. Even though they had been separated for 10 years, she couldn't help but feel sad. She suddenly changed her mind. Her daughter was fully entitled to the money. That day, she handed the check to Bona and hoped she could let go of her resentment toward her father. Bona was torn. Recalling the past, she couldn't help but cry. That day, Julie was shocked to discover her husband had taken out a loan of 30 million won without her knowledge. She immediately went to the hospital. Upon learning her husband was undergoing surgery, she stormed into the office demanding an explanation. Just then, her husband's phone rang. It was a thank you text from Bona. She finally realized that he had given the money to his ex-wife's daughter. After the surgery, the nurse reminded Hundu that his wife was waiting for him in the office. When he opened the door, he didn't see his wife. Soon, he saw the text message and felt relieved. Suddenly, he realized something was wrong. Why was the phone here? He quickly called his wife. Julie refused to answer. To her, the original wife was the biggest threat, so she contacted the other party to meet in person. The arrogant Julie sat down and immediately splashed water all over Miran. She also cursed them, calling them a fraud ring that had swindled her husband out of 30 million. Miran finally figured out what was going on. She retorted, as the daughter of a father, is it illegal to accept money from her father? Julie suspected like a madwoman that they had rekindled their old feelings. Miran mocked her with words she had said 10 years ago, telling her to just divorce if she lacked confidence. Julie was on the verge of collapse and didn't know what to do. Hundu returned home with a nervous heart. His younger daughter rushed over and said, "Mom is acting strange. She's been in the bathroom the whole time. No matter how she called, she wouldn't come out." Hundu quickly grabbed the key and opened the bathroom door. It was exactly the same as the scene when he forced her to marry him. Julie put on her clothes and walked out. She wouldn't be as foolish as before. She hysterically suspected that her husband had already betrayed her. The more she spoke, the more excited she became, completely losing her rationality. The elders heard the commotion and came over. Her mother-in-law looked down on her son-in-law and refused to listen to any of his explanations. This time, Julie didn't stop him, wanting him to go out and reflect on his actions. Hundu had been holding back all along, unwilling to repeat the same mistake and hurt his young daughter again. After being kicked out, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. Looking up at the moon, he thought of his ex-wife. He blamed himself for his one mistake that had cost him such a good woman. The next day, Julie caused a scene at the hospital again. Hundu wanted to explain to her, but she refused to listen. Hundu had had enough of her nonsense. He admitted that he couldn't let go of his ex-wife. He was only maintaining this marriage for the sake of their daughter. Julie accepted this superficial loyalty. Miran, who had come to print the medical records, heard everything clearly outside the door. She understood her ex-husband's heart. Sira, who hadn't seen her father for several days, couldn't stop crying. Her grandfather comforted her, saying that her father would be home soon. Donwoo complained to his mother not to be too harsh on his brother-in-law. However, his mother believed that her daughter should have ended this loveless marriage long ago. To cheer up her niece, Donwoo decided to take her out for a fun day. He also introduced her to his girlfriend. Who would have thought that they were half-sisters? The three of them had a wonderful day. They all left messages on the wish wall. Donwoo peeked at his girlfriend's wish. He was caught red-handed. Bona rushed over to stop him. Curiosity got the better of her, and she couldn't resist looking at her boyfriend's and Sira's cards. Sira's wish was for her father to come home soon. This deeply moved Bona. After they parted ways, Donwoo asked Sira to rate her future aunt. Sira felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity toward her. Meanwhile, Julie contacted Miran and insisted on meeting her. Upon hearing this, Miran's mother decided to take this opportunity to confront her face-to-face. When she saw her ex-husband walk into the restaurant, Miran was startled. At that moment, Julie, Miran's mother, and her aunt also rushed over. The three women were furious. Hundu was afraid that his ex-wife would be embarrassed and insisted that she leave first. Miran chose to stay. She took all the blame upon herself. She explained that she had fallen ill and had accidentally reunited with her ex-husband. She had contacted him in an effort to mend the relationship between father and daughter. She never expected it would ruin their marriage. Hundu was filled with shame. He knew how difficult life had been for his ex-wife and daughter over the years. Crystal wanted to test her son-in-law's feelings, so she forced Miran to apologize to her daughter. Because she still loved her ex-husband, Miran endured the humiliation and said, "I'm sorry" to Julie, who had ruined her marriage. Hundu couldn't sit still anymore. He disregarded everything and tried to take Miran away. His mother-in-law warned him that if he dared to step out of the door, it would mean divorce. Miran urged her ex-husband to go back. However, Hundu clung tightly to Miran, refusing to leave. On the other side, Julie couldn't hold back her tears. Her father watched with a heavy heart. He blamed his wife for destroying his daughter's marriage. The mother was the most clear-headed. Over the years, she had been overly critical of her son-in-law because she had seen that it was a marriage without love. She also hoped her daughter would realize the truth sooner rather than later. Julie hugged her mother and cried bitterly. Miran felt deeply guilty and kept urging her ex-husband to go back back and apologize. She didn't want him to ruin their current family because of a misunderstanding. Hundu said he'd been feeling a dull pain lately for no apparent reason. Miran urged him to get a proper checkup. Hundu believed this was all his own karma. In the afternoon, he went to the kindergarten and saw his young daughter, whom he hadn't seen in days. He then called Julie to the playground. Julie stubbornly said she would never divorce him. Hundu held on to his wife as she tried to leave and expressed his apologies. Julie asked him if he had ever loved her. His hesitant response spoke volumes. Her heart ached. She didn't want to hear any more empty words. Her mother warned her not to continue down this path, but it seemed she had already made up her mind. That day, she rushed to the hospital. The two looked at each other without saying a word. They first went to a shopping mall. Hundu picked out a set of clothes and insisted that she change into them. For the past 10 years, they had always tried to accommodate each other. Julie was in a hurry to go somewhere. The car eventually stopped in front of the courthouse. She then took out the divorce agreement. Hundu signed it without hesitation. Julie was a little angry and suspected that he had been waiting for this day. Hundu didn't say much in defense. That outfit was the last gift. He hoped she would leave in the most beautiful way possible. Their marriage had finally come to an end. That day, Sunny happened to see Dongwoo's girlfriend in the crowd. She ignored her nephew's attempts to stop her and insisted on going over to say hello. Dongwoo desperately signaled to his girlfriend. Sunny picked up a flyer and discovered that Bona ran a porridge shop. She wanted to talk to her. This scene was witnessed by Yoon-soo. He hated Bona for being heartless and refusing to reconcile with him. The three of them went to a coffee shop together. Dongwoo confessed that he had asked Bona to pretend to be his girlfriend to avoid an arranged marriage. He had also fabricated personal information. He never expected they would fall in love with each other, but his aunt didn't see it that way. She continued to press Bona about whether there was anything else she was hiding. Dongwoo hurriedly interrupted, insisting there was nothing. Sunny reminded Dongwoo that he should know his mother's temper. She then stood up and left. Bona felt terrible. She thought her boyfriend looked down on her for being divorced. That's why she had gone to such lengths to hide the truth. Yoon-soo hid in the corner, gloating. Soon or later, his ex-wife would cry and come back to him. After much consideration, he decided to return to his current home, continuing to cause trouble would only result in losing both money and the woman he loved. Hee-soo, who was 7 months pregnant, was still pleading for her husband. She begged her brother not to be so hard on him. At that moment, Yoon-soo appeared at the door. Her brother angrily pushed Yoon-soo into the living room. Yoon-soo started acting, telling his brother not to scare the baby. Then he apologized to his wife for doubting the child's origins. Hee-soo was half believing, half doubting. Yoon-soo lied earnestly, telling his wife to relax and wait for the baby to be born. However, Yoon-soo soon revealed his true intentions. He reminded his brother not to forget their previous agreement. If the porridge shop could open a chain, he would give him 50% of the shares. For his sister's happiness, the gangster brother had no choice but to compromise. On the other side, Bona was still sulking because Dongwoo came to see her but didn't show up. She kept her head down, researching new porridge recipes. Dongwoo came over to explain that his sister had just divorced her second husband. The family was currently sensitive about the matter. They were particularly resistant to partners with a history of divorce. Bona felt even more depressed after hearing this. In her aunt's eyes, she was just a vain woman. Facing the heartbroken Bona, Dongwoo could only hug her and comfort her. On the other side, the gangster brother was constantly urging Yoon-soo to come up with a new menu to capture the market and open more branches. Yoon-soo wanted to copy his ex-wife's newly developed medicinal porridge. His brother found it strange that he had once refused to do it, but now he was bringing it up voluntarily. Yoon-soo lied that it was for his wife and the baby on the way. That evening, just as Bona was about to go home, her backpack was snatched by a gang of motorcyclists. Bona was thrown to the ground and knocked unconscious. The thug ordered his men to handle everything. Dongwoo rushed to the hospital immediately. He stayed behind to take care of his girlfriend. Moments later, Bona finally regained consciousness. Dongwoo immediately apologized for letting her go home alone. Under his comfort, Bona finally forgave him. Meanwhile, Yoon-soo paced back and forth anxiously at home. When his wife came in and handed him the notebook he had snatched, he eagerly flipped through it. He quickly found the recipe for the medicinal porridge. But when he turned to the last page, he suddenly realized it was the gift he had given his wife. On the other side, Julie, who had just finalized her divorce, met Miran at a cafe and scolded Miran for causing her divorce. Miran believed that everything was her own fault. At that moment, Hundu, who had just finished his surgery, collapsed on the ground. On the other side, Julie was still threatening Miran when she suddenly received news that her husband had collapsed, but upon remembering that they had already divorced, she angrily hung up the phone. She then pretended not to care and left. Back in the car, she couldn't help but contact him, and upon learning of the critical situation, she grew deeply concerned. However, she had already made up her mind not to go to the hospital. Miran couldn't let go of her ex-husband. She ran to the side of the road to hail a taxi. As she turned around, she saw Julie's menacing glare. At that moment, Crystal was urging her family to pack her son-in-law's luggage. She looked up and saw the family photo, immediately ordering the driver to take it down and throw it away. Her husband still clung to a sliver of hope. What if her daughter changed her mind? However, Crystal remained firm in her decision. Just then, Julie finally returned, but she didn't want to answer her elders. She then went to her daughter's room and angrily tore up the book her husband had given her daughter. Sierra cried bitterly. She couldn't accept her parents' divorce. Julie begged her daughter not to hate her. The mother and daughter hugged each other and cried bitterly. When Miran arrived at the hospital, her ex-husband had already undergone surgery. Fortunately, he had survived the critical period. The doctor said that years of mental stress had led to his condition. The doctor mistook her for a family member. He repeatedly urged her not to let the patient be upset. Julie couldn't sleep and drank alcohol in the middle of the night, which was discovered by her father. At this point, her father hoped she could let go. Opening the ward door, Miran felt a mix of emotions. This man she loved and hated so much had become this way. Thinking of the past, tears blurred her vision. That day, Yun-soo found Bona wanting to reconcile. However, Bona didn't want to acknowledge him. Yun-soo scolded his ex-wife for being impolite. He also said some strange things. Bona didn't understand what he was saying. She then went to the office to deliver lunch to Dongwoo. An assistant came in and said there was a shop selling the same medicinal porridge as hers. Bona immediately guessed it was Yun-soo's doing. She went crazy and rushed to confront him. She charged toward the car without caring about anything else. Yun-soo was terrified. Facing Bona's accusations, Yun-soo denied stealing her recipe. Dongwoo didn't want to waste time arguing with him. If plagiarism was proven, he would sue him until he closed his shop. Yun-soo wasn't afraid at all, because he knew their secret. After much thought, Dongwoo decided to tell his mother part of the truth. He said that Bona, like his mother when she was young, had worked hard with her own hands to build her fortune. His mother, who had figured everything out, was about to hit him. The family heard the commotion and rushed over to stop her. Then Crystal forced her son to go see his girlfriend. Dongwoo tried his best to explain that it was all his fault, but his mother wouldn't listen. Just then, she saw Bona. Dongwoo was also startled. He didn't expect his girlfriend to be dancing to promote the store. Crystal walked down and observed secretly. When she saw Bona working hard to hand out flyers, she couldn't help but think of herself in the past. As she watched, tears welled up in her eyes. Then Crystal directly asked Bona if there was anything else she was hiding from her. Bona wanted to confess that she had been married before, but Dongwoo stopped her. After receiving a definitive answer, Crystal directly agreed to their marriage request because she saw that her son had changed a lot during the time he was dating Bona. This was also her standard for choosing a daughter-in-law. Bona was deeply moved by her future mother-in-law's approval. On the other side, Sierra asked her mother to take her to the hospital to visit her father. Julie couldn't refuse her daughter and used this as an excuse to take a look at the other party. She arrived at the hospital with a stern expression. Sierra's eyes were filled with tears as she couldn't understand why her parents had divorced. Facing his daughter, Hundu felt ashamed. Julie then told her daughter to go out. She hated her husband for being with her while still harboring feelings for his ex-wife. As she turned to leave, she remembered the luggage she had left at home. She asked him where to send those garbage items. After 10 years as a son-in-law, Hundu had no home of his own. He could only temporarily stay in the office. Recalling his failed life, Hundu regretted everything. The director also stated at this time that he would not hire someone with a chaotic emotional life, fearing it would tarnish the hospital's reputation. This time, Hundu truly had nothing left. Julie had already called a courier to send her ex-husband's luggage to his office. Opening the drawer, she saw the photo of them together. For 10 years, she had been deceiving herself. Hundu had never loved her from the start. It was she who had resorted to underhanded means to take him away. Hundu received a text message from Miran. She said their daughter had cooked porridge for him and hoped he would come out. Since being hospitalized, Hundu had been avoiding Miran, not wanting to burden her. It was time to put an end to this. As soon as they met, Miran asked him how his recovery was going. Hundu coldly told Miran not to contact him again. He then hypocritically blamed Miran. Hearing his heartless response, Miran cried and ran away. Hundu stood there, unable to stop the tears from flowing. That day, at the beauty salon, Sunny was shocked to discover that Hisu hadn't had an abortion. Hisu was so scared, she covered her stomach. She didn't want any involvement with her ex. Sunny, however, was convinced that she was carrying her own flesh and blood. Once the baby was born, the truth would come out. Hisu suddenly knelt down and begged her to spare her. Sunny felt a pang of mercy. She then personally drove her to the intersection. Just as she was about to leave, she saw her nephew's girlfriend. She got out of the car to say hello, but she realized they knew each other. Bona mocked them both for always taking taking what others had. Ki-soo finally realized her husband had plagiarized her recipes. Since she was too far away, Sunny couldn't hear what they were saying. Dongwoo arrived shortly after and saw his aunt first. He was extremely nervous. His family didn't know his girlfriend was divorced. Ki-soo was also shocked. Seeing Dongwoo's panicked expression, she suddenly understood everything. Soon after, Dongwoo finally found Young-soo's criminal evidence. Young-soo went to Bona's porridge shop and threatened her to take down the same dish. Bona refused. Young-soo knew she dared not tell her future in-laws about her marital history. He arrogantly threatened Dongwoo, and Dongwoo saw everything. He walked over and took out the key he had stolen earlier. If he handed it over to the police, they could charge him with burglary and other crimes. If he didn't want to spend a few years in prison, he had to keep his mouth shut. Young-soo left in a rage. The cowardly him dared not expose Bona. After this incident, Bona no longer wanted to hide her past. She persuaded Dongwoo to tell his family the truth. She could endure any humiliation. That day, Bona was going to formally visit Dongwoo's parents. She never expected Young-soo to beat her to it. He had been lingering outside the door. When he saw a young girl approaching, he quickly got out of the car and tried to strike up a conversation. He lied, claiming to be Dongwoo's good friend. The innocent Sira believed him. After learning that Dongwoo was coming to pick up Bona, he didn't know what evil plan he was hatching next. Dongwoo arrived on time to pick up Bona. Seeing how well suited they looked together, Miran couldn't help but smile with satisfaction. They then went to a flower shop together to pick out gifts, and decided to tell their elders about Bona's past marriage. Dongwoo was afraid his girlfriend would be humiliated. He suggested that he talk to his parents first before visiting them. Bona disagreed and insisted on facing them together. When his daughter-in-law arrived, Crystal changed her domineering attitude and kept praising the flowers Bona had brought. Kunnam was meeting Bona for the first time, and his affection for her was evident. Dongwoo suggested sitting down to talk properly. He wanted to tell his parents something while they were alone. Just as he was about to speak, his father suddenly remembered that a guest was waiting in the bedroom for his son. He said it was a good friend from university. Crystal complained to her husband for letting strangers into the house. Dongwoo walked into the bedroom and was startled to see Young-soo. Young-soo just wanted to retrieve his incriminating evidence. Otherwise, he would go downstairs and tell his parents the truth. Dongwoo angrily grabbed him. The scoundrel forced Dongwoo to hand over the key immediately. Otherwise, his marriage would be ruined. With no other choice, Dongwoo hurriedly took him outside. He reluctantly handed over the key. The scoundrel left satisfied. Unaware of this, Bona was telling her niece a story. Dongwoo looked at her with pity. Julie, who was meeting Bona for the first time, felt like she had seen her before but couldn't remember where. Bona didn't know that Julie was the woman who had stolen her father away years ago. Julie asked about Bona's family situation. Bona honestly told her that her parents had divorced when she was young. Julie, who had recently divorced, felt a connection with Bona. She felt that Bona was as pitiful as her own daughter. After dinner, the two decided to tell their elders about Bona's past marriage. Crystal really liked her future daughter-in-law and promised to support her career in the future. The happier her mother-in-law was, the more painful it was for Bona, but she had to say what she had to say. Just as she was about to speak, Sunny burst in, complaining that her son couldn't let go of his ex-girlfriend who was already married. Crystal, upon hearing this, angrily said that they could never marry someone with a marital history. Bona, after hearing this, lost the courage to reveal her own marital history. After leaving, Bona sat in the car and couldn't help but cry. Perhaps they shouldn't have fallen in love in the first place. She cried and asked Dongwoo what they should do. Dongwoo tightly embraced her, trying to soothe all the wounds on her body. On the other side, Young-soo, who had abandoned Bona, was also struggling. He accompanied Hee-soo to the hospital for a prenatal checkup, but his face showed no sign of happiness. The doctor asked him to take a look at the baby. He glanced at it impatiently. For some reason, he felt a bit dazed. Especially, when he heard the baby's heartbeat. He felt a surge of emotion, but when he saw his wife's face, he turned away in disgust. He suspected that his wife was carrying his ex-boyfriend's child. Already in a bad mood, he later saw his ex-boyfriend's mother bringing supplements to his wife. Hee-soo felt resistant, thinking she was trying to get involved again. Little did she know that Sunny was just concerned about her situation. Hee-soo eventually accepted the gift. Little did she know that her husband was standing nearby. Enraged, he lost his mind and followed Sunny to her car. He then warned Sunny not to show up in front of him again. On the other side, Crystal bought Bona all sorts of things every day, but the more she did, the more guilty Bona felt. Little did she know that Sunny not only knew Young-soo, but was also secretly investigating him. Soon, she discovered the promotional photo from the porridge shop. She immediately invited Hee-soo to a cafe and handed him the promotional flyer from 5 years ago. She suspected that Bona was Young-soo's ex-wife. The complicated relationship made Sunny think Bona was a fraud, so she immediately contacted her sister and demanded to meet her right away. Hee-soo didn't want the two to break up, so she told Dongwoo about it. Dongwoo was on the phone while rushing to the restaurant. Sunny refused refused to communicate and said she would tell her mother about it. Upon learning that Bona was with Crystal, Dongwoo couldn't say anything and hung up the phone. Fortunately, Dongwoo arrived at the restaurant first. Mom was so happy she couldn't stop smiling. Dongwoo made an excuse to go to the restroom. Bona felt a little uneasy. She didn't know why he was so nervous. Dongwoo finally caught up with the aunt at the door and explained his situation. His sister had recently divorced. Mom's mood had just started to improve. He said that his aunt couldn't cause trouble at this time. After much persuasion, he finally convinced his aunt. On the other side, Bona, through her constant efforts, her porridge shop was recognized. A large company invited her to participate in a competition. The winner would receive investment to open a chain of stores. This was exactly what Yoon-soo had been planning to do. Upon learning that his ex-wife was also participating in the competition, he started to think of a scheme. Bona refused to answer her ex-husband's call. A shop assistant snatched the phone and scolded him angrily. Bona then went to the law firm to find Dongwoo. Yoon-soo shamelessly followed her there and confronted Bona, asking why she was always blocking his path. He tried to threaten her with her secret to make her give up. Otherwise, her marriage would be ruined. Crystal also arrived at the company. At that moment, from afar, she saw Bona. Just as she was about to approach, she recognized the man beside her as the one who had come to her house last time. At the time, she had felt that he didn't seem like her son's friend. She was curious about what they were talking about. She slowly approached and heard the man threatening Bona. Upon learning that Bona had been married before, she was so shocked she didn't know what to do. She pushed Bona aside and quickly pressed the elevator button to go upstairs. Upon seeing Dongwoo, she slapped him across the face. Looking at Bona at the door, Dongwoo had already figured out what was going on. Crystal was about to attack again. Bona rushed forward to stop her. Crystal was acting like a madwoman, smashing things everywhere. She didn't want to see Bona at all. Dongwoo told Bona to go home first. He would handle it himself. Then his family interrogated him like a criminal, demanding he break up with Bona. Dongwoo firmly refused to break up. His sister had also been divorced, hadn't she? Julie immediately countered that their situations were different. The family firmly opposed the marriage. Dongwoo emphasized that Bona had completely cut ties with her ex-husband. The situation they feared wouldn't happen. Crystal angrily said that the man had come to their house, so how could they not worry? She then beat her son again. Yoon-soo had been waiting for Bona in the parking lot. Seeing her dazed and disoriented, he said, "I'm sorry." Then he added, "No parents can win against their children, so she must be able to marry Dongwoo." He hoped Bona wouldn't participate in the competition and compete with him. Bona wasn't in the mood to respond. After thinking it over, she decided to go explain herself in person. As she stood hesitating at the entrance, she encountered her uncle. Kunnam told her to leave quickly. His wife was angry. Watching Bona's departing figure, he felt particularly regretful. Dongwoo then came out and immediately recognized his girlfriend's car. Ignoring his father's attempts to stop him, he rushed to catch up. Bona finally noticed him and quickly stopped the car. Dongwoo was out of breath from running. He explained that he was fine. Then he comforted Bona, saying that as long as she persevered, he was confident they could overcome all difficulties. Bona nodded tearfully. The two then embraced tightly. Dongwoo never would have imagined that Bona's father was his former brother-in-law. The consecutive blows left Hundu without the will to live. He hid himself in the countryside, refusing to see anyone. Miran was worried and decided to meet with Julie. She told her that Hundu seemed to have disappeared and lost contact. Julie mocked her indifferently. Miran didn't give up. Finally, she found Hundu. Miran wanted to forgive him and take him back. Despite his current state, Hundu felt he didn't deserve to be with her. Miran scolded him for eating junk food and said he was trying to die slowly. She also regretted divorcing her husband so easily back then. Hundu pretended to be indifferent and told Miran to go back. Miran left heartbroken. In the middle of the night, Hundu was suddenly awakened by a nightmare. He was afraid of losing his ex-wife again. He finally realized he couldn't keep hurting the person who loved him. Miran soon received a text message from her ex-husband. Upon learning that Hundu had returned, Miran was overjoyed. After finding an apartment, Miran accompanied him to select daily necessities. It felt just like when they were a family of 3 moving into a new home. At that time, he was the happiest person in the world. He should cherish the time he is with Miran even more now. After settling everything, Hundu missed his young daughter. He then gave the address to Julie. Although they had divorced, Julie had no intention of cutting off the father-daughter relationship. But when she entered the apartment and saw a pair of water cups, she lost her composure. She feared that her ex-husband and his former wife were reconciling. At that moment, she discovered a note Miran had left on the refrigerator. Driven by jealousy, she grabbed her daughter and tried to leave. Hundu pushed her outside and demanded to know why she was causing such a scene. Julie couldn't understand what she lacked compared to Miran, but now, it was pointless to dwell on it. She would come to take her daughter back that evening. Looking at the sleeping Sira, Hundu felt a mix of emotions. Some mistakes might be impossible to fix. Late at night, Julie insisted on taking her daughter away. The more she thought about it, the more she felt resentful. After meeting, she stated that she would never allow the father and daughter to see each other again. Despite Hundo's objections, it was to no avail. Miran understood her ex-husband's heart. As parents, there are many things they can't control, but the failure of a marriage always hurts the children the most. There was no other way now. They could only do their best to make amends. Midway through their conversation, Hundu got up to go to the bathroom. To their surprise, Bona and Dongwoo came out from inside. Miran was filled with anxiety. She dared not let her daughter know. After all, her daughter had not yet completely let go of her hatred for her father. Bona asked her mother what she was doing there. Miran lied, saying she had come to meet a friend. After seeing the two leave, she finally relaxed. Hundu was relieved to learn that his daughter had someone she was seeing. Bona and Dongwoo parted reluctantly. As she turned around, she saw her mother and father hugging goodbye. Bona angrily declared that she never wanted to see him again. Hundu stood there speechless. Miran quickly caught up with her daughter and told her that her father had already divorced. Bona couldn't accept it. Miran hoped her daughter would understand. From beginning to end, they had never let go of each other, so they decided to spend the rest of their lives together. Bona's mind was in chaos. No one knew how much pressure she was under. Because Bona had been married before, Crystal had forced her son to break up with her. Dongwoo told her about how Bona had been deceived into divorcing. She was a very pure and kind woman. He begged his mother to set aside her prejudices and accept her. After listening carefully, his mother still couldn't accept it. She hoped her son would find a partner with a simpler background. Bona stood at the door and heard everything clearly. Tears welled up in her eyes. Couldn't urge her to leave. No one could endure his wife's temper. As a lawyer, Dongwoo had no choice but to present the divorce papers, stating that he was determined to marry Bona. Bona rushed in. Crystal thought she had encouraged her son to do this. She threw the papers at him. Dongwoo didn't want Bona to be humiliated and said it was all his idea. Crystal angrily said she would cut off all ties with her son. Dongwoo pulled Bona out of the house. Bona felt selfish. Dongwoo said no one could stop them from being together. The next day, Crystal asked Bona to meet her outside. She begged her to leave her son. Bona said she was sorry, but she had already promised Dongwoo they wouldn't break up. Seeing this, Crystal forced Bona to contact her mother. Bona refused and left alone. Crystal seemed to have another plan. She stopped her sister from making a scene. Miran had always believed her daughter's relationship was going smoothly. She accidentally learned the truth from someone else. She immediately went to Dongwoo's office and asked to meet his mother. Dongwoo knew his mother's temper. He couldn't let the two meet at this moment. After calming her down, he personally escorted his mother-in-law out. Coincidentally, Miran happened to encounter them. Crystal stated that she didn't want to see them again. Miran didn't want to deal with it and turned to leave. Crystal found it odd that they would come here. She then went to her son's office and demanded Bona's home address. In short, she refused to allow him to marry a divorced woman. Dongwoo didn't care. He saw his girlfriend's kind heart. Her mother was so angry that she had to leave. She then contacted her assistant to investigate Bona's parents. Dongwoo told Bona about his aunt coming to find him. Bona couldn't understand why her mother wanted to reconcile with her father. Miran told her daughter to eat quickly, while apologizing for keeping it a secret and secretly reconciling with her ex-husband. Bona couldn't help but cry. She felt she had no right to interfere in her mother's emotions. She said she would try her best to accept her father. Miran was relieved that her daughter understood her. The assistant quickly took photos of Bona's parents' meeting. She instructed the assistant to send the photos immediately. Unaware of this, Dongwoo went out of his way to please his mother, hoping she would change her mind. As he was getting ready to go to work, Dongwoo happened to run into the assistant. The assistant's nervous demeanor aroused his suspicion. Kunam opened the file first. Inside were several photos of a woman. He was puzzled. Dongwoo burst in and snatched the photos from his hands. Seeing Bona's mother's personal file, he was instantly filled with rage. Crystal emerged from the bathroom at that moment. She realized the truth had been exposed. Dongwoo believed his mother's actions were an invasion of privacy. Crystal insisted on meeting Bona's parents to force him to break up with Bona. Dongwoo was utterly disappointed in his mother. He declared he wouldn't let her manipulate him like his sister. Crystal, enraged, raised her hand to hit him. Family members rushed to stop her. She spat out a threat. If he insisted on marrying Bona, he should leave the house. Dongwoo, furious, agreed. Crystal collapsed onto the bed. Unable to accept it, he immediately took Bona to a wedding dress shop. When he pulled back the curtain, he was amazed. He walked over and said he wanted to get married right away. The date was set for Christmas. Bona looked at him expectantly, mistakenly thinking she had gotten her elder's approval. Dongwoo didn't answer. You could tell from his expression that it wasn't that easy, but she had already made up her mind not to break up with him. Crystal came to her son's room. After thinking it over, she could only come up with one last plan. She took out a baby outfit and a photo of the baby. In the morning, Sunny came to her sister's room. She immediately noticed the photo on the table. She wondered who the child in the photo was. Crystal felt guilty and told her not to touch her things. Sunny didn't understand. She heard that her sister was going to meet Bona. She also wanted to go with her, but Sunny refused no matter what. On the way, she held the photo and recalled the baby's appearance. Feeling a pang of sadness, she wanted Bona to know how important Dongwoo was to her. She then confessed her secret to the other person. "This is my child." At the time, she was busy with her business and didn't know the baby had pneumonia. She thought it was just a simple cold. As a result, the child died before reaching 1 year old. In despair, she adopted an infant. Bona was deeply shocked. Could Dongwoo not be Crystal's biological child? Crystal didn't answer directly. She only emphasized that it was because of Bona. Now she was about to lose another child. Bona finally realized that Dongwoo had left home for her. Crystal made it clear that as long as they were together, she would cut off all ties with her son. Today was supposed to be the day they chose the wedding dress. Dongwoo was wearing a crown and acting cute. Bona couldn't help but laugh as she watched. Her eyes grew moist. All night long, Bona's gaze remained fixed on Dongwoo's face. Her eyes were filled with deep affection and reluctance to part. At that moment, Crystal, who was tossing and turning in bed, told her husband about what had happened during the day. Her husband was afraid hadn't they agreed to keep it a secret. Sunny had also said some strange things today. She wanted to find the child she had abandoned, which was why she had returned to Korea. Sunny was immediately thrown off balance. She rushed into her sister's room. Sunny was confused. Crystal warned her not to look for that child again. 2 days later, Bona received a text message from Crystal asking for her final answer. She thought for a moment and sent the reply to Dongwoo's phone. Dongwoo thought Bona had sent it by mistake, but he quickly realized something was wrong. The two arrived at the restaurant on time. Bona agreed to break up. She felt sorry for her boyfriend, who didn't even know what his biological mother looked like. She didn't want him to lose his foster mother as well. Crystal let out a long sigh of relief. She had promised last time that she would give her a compensation if they broke up. Just then, Dongwoo burst in. Crystal was furious, thinking that Bona had done it on purpose. Dongwoo shouted and demanded to take Bona away immediately. Bona deliberately accepted the check to show her determination to break up. To make Dongwoo give up, Bona said many things against her true feelings. Dongwoo couldn't believe Bona would betray him for money. Bona forced herself to say goodbye to him. She then took off her ring and placed it on the table. Dongwoo's tears couldn't be contained anymore. It sounded like the sound of a broken heart. He couldn't lose Bona. When he chased after her, she had already gotten into the elevator. No matter how fast he ran, he couldn't stop her from leaving. The next day, Crystal received a package from Bona. It was the return check and a letter. In the letter, Bona expressed her guilt toward her aunt. Little did she know that this family harbored a secret that couldn't be revealed. Sunny's offhand remark instantly enraged her sister. She felt that Julie was just like her. No matter what, she refused to give up the person she loved. To her surprise, Crystal became furious upon hearing this. She would never allow her to speak recklessly in front of Julie. Sunny didn't understand why her sister was so upset. She wanted to find that child as soon as possible. Kunam, upon hearing this, hurriedly told his wife. The couple seemed very afraid, as if they were hiding something. Crystal called her sister into the room and warned her again not to search for the child who had abandoned them. On the other side, Dongwoo desperately wanted to find out why his girlfriend broke up with him. He overheard a strange conversation. Sunny felt wronged. "You're willing to go to such lengths to find Bona for your son. In any case, no one will stop me from finding the child." Hearing everything, Dongwoo could no longer stay calm and demanded to know what his mother had told Bona. Sunny, feeling guilty, told her son to go upstairs and rest. Dongwoo couldn't give up on Bona. He immediately went to the porridge shop, dragged her outside, and demanded to know why she suddenly broke up with him. Bona couldn't explain herself and emphasized that since they had already broken up, there was no need to dwell on the past. She then turned around and left. Pretending to be heartless, she hid behind a wall alone. The two of them loved each other but couldn't be together. On the other side, Crystal packed her sister's luggage and was about to kick her out. It turned out they weren't related by blood. They were just good friends who had known each other for 40 years. Sunny couldn't understand what finding her biological child had to do with her sister. Crystal angrily grabbed her sister's hair. Sunny felt extremely wronged. She had come back to Korea this time specifically to find the child who had abandoned her. It turned out that one of their children wasn't biologically theirs. Kunam urged his wife to calm down. If Sunny found out that we had adopted her child, how heartbroken she would be. Crystal blamed Sunny for disrupting her life. Dongwoo wanted to know why Bona suddenly broke up. He suspected it had something to do with his mother, so he secretly followed her to investigate. As a result, Crystal immediately recognized her son's car. She confronted him, asking why he had done this. Dongwoo confessed his true feelings. Crystal realized she couldn't keep it a secret anymore, so she confessed that she had once lost a child. To ease the pain, she adopted a child, meaning that one of her two children was not biologically hers. Dongwoo was deeply shocked. He wondered which of him and his sister was the adopted child. To make her son break up, the mother lied that Dongwoo was the one she had adopted. Dongwoo was deeply shaken. Crystal instructed her son that this must never be revealed to his sister. In her heart, the brother and sister were the same. Crystal was in a great mood after resolving all the issues. Dongwoo finally gave up on Bona. Sunny pretended to stop searching for the abandoned child to ease the tension. Everything was developing in the direction she had hoped for. Dongwoo struggled all afternoon in the office. He then called Bona and said he had something important to tell her. After saying that, he didn't bother her anymore. As soon as they meet, Bona rushes to express her determination to break up. Dongwoo remains silent and then pulls out an envelope. It's the wedding photo he just received. He hopes they can remember each other's best moments. Bona flips through the photos with a mix of emotions. Dongwoo expresses his regret for not being able to be with Bona. Bona has no words to respond. Their past love is still vivid in their minds. That evening, Crystal called Sunny into her room and told her not to go looking for the child anymore. After Sunny left, Kunam asked his wife how she had convinced their son to break up. Crystal told him the truth and told her husband not to talk nonsense. That day, Sunny suddenly walked in and called Dongwoo out to eat. Heartbroken, Dongwoo had no appetite. He asked his aunt about his childhood. He finally learned that after his sister was born, his mother had tried for many years before conceiving him. Sunny remembered clearly that Dongwoo was particularly healthy when he was born. Dongwoo asked his aunt, in confusion, if his mother had another child before him. Sunny said that his mother had only given birth to the two of them. Dongwoo was full of doubts. His mother had clearly said that one of her two children was adopted. Had she been lying? Later, he asked his mother about the child who had died before he was born while his sister was away. Dongwoo was very confused by his mother's explanation, which differed from his aunt's. Crystal, feeling guilty, told him not to ask anymore. Crystal returned to her room with her heart racing. Her husband quickly gave her medicine and urged her not to deceive the child. Crystal shouted for Sunny to come over, wanting to urge her to return to Australia as soon as possible. Today was Bona's competition day. Although they had broken up, Dongwoo couldn't help but pay attention to her. He kept calling to ask about the progress. In the end, Bona made it to the finals alongside her ex-husband through her own abilities. Yun-soo felt bitter inside. He stopped the elevator and sarcastically said that since she had missed out on a wealthy family, she might as well come beg him. Bona didn't bother to respond. Yun-soo chased after her and continued to harass her. Bona didn't want to deal with him and stepped on the gas pedal hard to leave. Yun-soo stood there feeling a bit panicked. Tomorrow was the final competition day. Bona swore she would beat her ex-husband and get the investment to open a chain store. Yun-soo arranged to meet the agent outside to bribe him. Little did he know that their secret deal had already been discovered by the company. As Yun-soo had anticipated, after tampering with the reports, his operating report showed significantly higher profits than Bona's. Just when he thought he had the upper hand, Bona suddenly asked the judges if they had ever considered why the porridge they developed was so strikingly similar. The female agent hurriedly ended the evaluation, believing the outcome was already decided. However, she was interrupted by her superior. Bona then described the process of developing her medicinal porridge, even consulting a renowned doctor, and provided the doctor's photo and contact information. Yun-soo, who only knew the recipe, clearly felt uneasy. He evaded the question and stammered. Bona knew her ex-husband liked to scheme, so she had intentionally leaked the recipe for the wild vegetable porridge to him earlier. However, this new dish had a fatal flaw. It could potentially cause food poisoning. She presented the relevant test results as proof. Faced with the evidence, Yun-soo had no defense. He angrily glared at Bona. Then he kicked over the chair and left. Bona's hard work finally paid off. The female agent also got what she deserved and was fired on the spot. Bona was about to drive away. Her ex-husband came to stop her. He blamed Bona for ruining his life. Bona didn't want to deal with him. Meanwhile, Dongwoo went to the hospital to investigate his background. Through the records, he found that the information was completely different from what his mother had told him. He then threw the birth records in his mother's face. Crystal was at a loss for words. Dongwoo accused his mother of lying to him, saying that if he married Bona, he would lose his foster parents, unable to bear it anymore. Kunam stood by his son. Dongwoo screamed at his mother, demanding to know why she had done this. Crystal could only apologize, saying she had done it all for him. Dongwoo was utterly disappointed in his mother. As he turned to leave, he saw his sister and aunt. They had been listening outside the door. Sunny defended Dongwoo. Julie also found it unbelievable. Dongwoo decided to leave home. Krista thought it was just a little trick he was playing. Dongwoo decided to leave Korea. Maybe distance would help him forget his feelings for Bona. Crystal remained convinced that her son couldn't marry a woman with a history of marriage. Dongwoo said he would fly to Seattle next month. He asked Bona to cook one last meal for him, just like before, but he couldn't bring himself to eat a single bite. Dongwoo confessed that he was going abroad to live and wasn't sure when he'd return. Maybe he'd have to wait until he'd forgotten her. Bona tearfully told him to take care. The two bid each other a tearful farewell. However, the next day, Crystal unexpectedly came to her son's law firm and told him he didn't need to go abroad. Dongwoo was shocked. Crystal said she agreed to let her son marry Bona. That day, Bona wondered why her ex-husband was involved with the fired agent. It turned out Yoon-soo had been deceived by the other party into coming here under the pretense of a larger investment. Bona, busy opening a new branch, was unaware that her future mother-in-law had already agreed to their marriage. Dongwoo couldn't believe it and kept asking his mother to confirm. Crystal had thought it over all night and finally realized she couldn't choose her children's future for them. Dongwoo was overjoyed. Yoon-soo, however, was being manipulated by the agent. To defeat his ex-wife, he was willing to put all his assets on the line for one last gamble. Shortly after parting ways, he encountered Dongwoo in the company parking lot. He was about to mock him. Dongwoo suddenly invited him to attend his wedding. Seeing the shocked expression on his face, Dongwoo left triumphantly. Yoon-soo was furious. As soon as he got home, he persuaded Hee-soo to mortgage their property to participate in the bidding. If successful, they could obtain 3 times more investment than his ex-wife. Hee-soo refused. Her due date was approaching, and she didn't want to take risks at this time. Yoon-soo blamed his wife for not being willing to make any sacrifices. Eager to share the good news, Dongwoo finally got in touch with Bona. He told her to get off the bus immediately and wait there. Bona was confused. Dongwoo then took her to a Western-style restaurant. Bona was afraid something bad was going to happen. Dongwoo told her that his mother had agreed to their marriage. Bona was overjoyed. That day, she returned home with Dongwoo. Bona thanks her aunt for accepting her. Crystal interrupts her. The reason she agreed to the marriage is not only because of her son's persistence, but also because she recognizes Bona. She hopes the two of them will get along well in the future. On the other side, Yoon-soo mistakenly takes a scammer for his last hope. The agent pretends to be someone important and keeps exaggerating the investment returns. Yoon-soo believes this is his last chance to turn his life around. As soon as he gets home, he asks about visa issues. He deceived his wife into selling their only property. Now he had the chance to start a business abroad. Leave this heartbreaking place. Hee-soo also hoped to start a new life in a new environment. Little did she know that her cunning husband wanted to abandon her and their unborn child. Yoon-soo quickly transferred all his assets to the agent and planned to leave Seoul the next day. That day, Hee-soo saw her husband dragging a suitcase and about to leave. Yoon-soo lied that he was going to check out the company first. Hee-soo tried to stop him. Tomorrow was the day she was supposed to be hospitalized. She wanted her husband to be by her side during this important moment. Yoon-soo told his wife not to be so dramatic. Besides, he believed the child wasn't his. Hee-soo, feeling helpless, no longer insisted. She said she would wait for him with the baby. Upon arriving at the airport, Yoon-soo suddenly realized he couldn't get through to his agent's phone. He was frantic and had no choice but to contact Hee-soo again, asking her to find out what was going on. When Hee-soo rushed to the office, she learned that her husband had been scammed. The agent had already fled with the money. With no sign of the agent, Yoon-soo grew increasingly anxious. It wasn't until his wife called that he realized he had been deceived. At that moment, Bona had just signed a contract with the headquarters. Hee-soo, pregnant, barged into the office. Upon learning that the agent had been fired long ago, she finally realized she had been deceived. Unable to bear the blow, Hee-soo fainted. Bona immediately took her to the hospital. The mother and child were in critical condition. They must contact the guardian immediately. Yoon-soo, who had lost everything, was in no state to answer the phone. Bona was frantic and asked Dongwoo to try contacting him. At that moment, Yoon-soo finally realized something was wrong. The surgery was eventually completed. The baby was safe. Hee-soo had severe bleeding and went into shock but was barely saved. The doctor asked Bona to come in. The mother had something to say to her. Hee-soo, with tears in her eyes, knew that everything she was going through was karma. She hoped Bona could forgive Yoon-soo. Bona told her not to worry. Yoon-soo was on his way to the hospital and would arrive shortly. But just as he finished speaking, Hee-soo closed her eyes. Her body began bleeding again and needed to be stopped immediately. Moments later, Hee-soo was wheeled out of the emergency room. The doctors had done everything they could. Yoon-soo had originally planned to abandon Hee-soo, but seeing his wife in this state, he felt terrible. Sunny rushed to the hospital and asked her if she had gone to see the baby. Yoon-soo looked down on her, thinking it wasn't his child. This was all her son's fault. The gangster brother didn't care. As soon as he saw Yoon-soo, he ordered his men to beat him up. Yoon-soo shouted in protest. Anyway, he didn't want to live anymore. He might as well be beaten to death. Sunny rushed out to stop him, curious whether the child was really her own flesh and blood. So she suggested doing a paternity test right away. Yoon-soo was very reluctant, but he still cooperated and provided a sample for testing. After hours of waiting, the results came out. Seeing the results, Sunny was shocked. Yoon-soo snatched the report and took a look. He never expected the child to be his own. Yoon-soo was like a soulless man, recalling the harm he had done to his wife. Tears of regret welled up in his eyes. Unfortunately, life cannot be replayed. Some mistakes cannot be undone. Ki-soo eventually passed away due to severe bleeding. On the other side, Miran and Hundu, who had been separated for 10 years, held a remarriage ceremony. Bona also brought good news. Dongwoo's parents agreed to their marriage. Miran burst into tears upon hearing the news. The next day, Bona visited her future in-laws with homemade food prepared by her mother. She also included a thank you letter, thanking them for accepting Bona's past and imperfections. She hoped both sets of parents would protect the children with love. Every word touched Crystal's heart. The next day, Yoon-soo came to Bona's porridge shop. He had fully come to terms with himself. He said he would strive to earn Bona's forgiveness. Bona didn't know what he was going to do. After they parted, Yoon-soo called his mother. He told her to take good care of herself. Bona spent the whole day thinking about her ex-husband's words, until her ex-mother-in-law called. The old woman was worried that her son was thinking of doing something reckless. After the call, Yoon-soo turned off his phone. Yoon-soo walked to the rooftop of the hospital, intending to end his foolish life. Bona understood her ex-husband and quickly went to find him. Strangely, there was no one on the rooftop. Suddenly, the sound of a man crying came from the hallway. They quickly found Yoon-soo. Dongwoo wanted to go over but was stopped by Bona. She then loudly asked Yoon-soo what he was trying to do. Yoon-soo, with tears in his eyes, felt like a worthless person. He wanted to atone for his sins by dying but lacked the courage to jump. Bona said, "If you truly want to atone, first raise the child. Only then will Ki-soo and I forgive you." Bona finished speaking and walked away crying. Yoon-soo was finally snapped out of his stupor. He then went to the maternity ward and brought out his pitiful son. That day, Crystal came to pick up Bona, but unexpectedly ran into her ex-son-in-law in the parking lot. The assertive Crystal apologized for the first time, hoping he would forgive her. The two kept running into each other. Miran feared getting involved again. Hundu didn't realize their daughter was already in the car with her future mother-in-law. Crystal wanted to give a wedding gift, a 200-square-meter apartment in a bustling area as a wedding home for the young couple. As long as she liked it, they would sign the contract immediately. In the evening, Hundu received a call from Miran reminding him not to be late. He was finally going to meet his future son-in-law. He was filled with anticipation. Coincidentally, the two men happened to meet in the elevator. Both were surprised upon learning that they were going to the same place. Hundu dared not think any further. Upon arrival, his daughter called. Hundu hurriedly covered the photo and watched Dongwoo walk into the restaurant. His wife and daughter soon arrived. Hundu pulled Miran aside and lied that he had an emergency surgery and had to return to the hospital immediately. He then tremblingly walked to the parking lot. To confirm his suspicions, he approached Julie under the pretext of delivering a holiday gift to Sira. He then deliberately steered the conversation toward Dongwoo. He heard that Dongwoo was about to get married. From Julie, he learned that Dongwoo's fiancée was his own daughter. Hundu was so overwhelmed he nearly fell over. He knew he had committed a terrible sin. In his sorrow, he received a video message from Bona. Dongwoo regretted not being able to meet his future father-in-law. He insisted on recording a video greeting. Watching the two of them so in love, Hundu was nearly broken. Crystal was at home flipping through their wedding photos over and over again, looking very happy. The next morning, Dongwoo said that his father-in-law had an emergency surgery yesterday and couldn't meet him. His sister remarked that it was really a coincidence. The other person's profession was similar to her ex-husband's, but no one took it to heart. Sunny, who had returned from abroad, was in a bad mood. Where could she possibly find her own child? Back then, she had become pregnant out of wedlock and given birth to a child. She had entrusted Crystal, who was like a sister to her, to find a family to adopt the child. After much inquiry, she finally tracked down the family that had adopted the child. To her shock, they said that due to a fire that had occurred at the time, they had returned the child. Moreover, during the fire, the child's arm had been burned. Sunny was heartbroken upon hearing this. As soon as she returned home, she threw the baby's full moon photos at her sister. "You said her adoptive parents were good people. Why didn't you tell me about returning the child? Where is my child?" Crystal insisted she was innocent. "After you went to Australia, you cut off all contact for nearly half a year. How was I supposed to reach you? In any case, the child is doing well now. Don't disturb them." Sunny no longer believed her sister's words. She insisted on seeing her daughter with her own eyes to see how she was doing. Kunnam felt a pang of sympathy and was about to speak, but his wife stopped him with a loud voice. Sunny was determined and secretly urged her brother-in-law to reveal the truth. She couldn't understand why her sister was so opposed to her searching for the child. As the two were whispering, Crystal happened to overhear them. She was furious and threatened to cut off all ties with them if they continued. Sunny couldn't understand why her sister would say such terrible things. Crystal held on to Kong for a long time, unable to calm down. When she turned around, She saw her daughter with a shocked expression. Julie hadn't even finished speaking before her mother scolded her and told her to go back to her room. Her excited expression only piqued Julie's curiosity, so she made an excuse to drink with her aunt. She also asked her to treat her like her own daughter. Sunny refused. Julie revealed a secret. Because she had been burned by fire when she was a child, her mother had spoiled her endlessly. Sunny was surprised that her child had also experienced a fire. Julie joked, "Am I not your biological daughter?" Sunny didn't take it seriously. After further investigation, Sunny accidentally discovered that her sister had buried a child 34 years ago. On the other side, Hundu decided to find the right time to come clean about everything. Miran took out the Christmas gift her daughter had given her and attached a note. In the letter, Bona thanked her father for coming back. Hundu felt guilty after reading it. Miran then pulls him along to go shopping. Just then, they receive a call from their daughter. She suggests having dinner together tonight. It just so happens that the father hasn't met his future son-in-law yet. Upon hearing this, Hundu scolds his wife for not consulting him first. He then makes an excuse and leaves in a hurry. Miran doesn't understand why he always avoids meeting his daughter's fiancé. Could there be something he's hiding? Hundu hesitates to speak. He then leaves in a hurry. Miran returned home alone. In her daughter's room, she saw an invitation that looked familiar. After trying hard to remember, she finally realized that it was the logo of the company where Julie worked. Thinking about her husband's recent, unusual behavior, she immediately confronted him. How could Bona have contact with that woman? Hundu no longer hid the truth and revealed that Dongwu and Julie were siblings. Miran was shocked upon hearing this. She was at a loss for words. Hundu was determined to protect his daughter's happiness, no matter the cost. There were only 2 days left until the meeting between the two families. Hundu called Bona over and lied that he had to postpone the meeting due to work. Her mother was there to back him up. Bona couldn't understand why the date that had been set weeks ago could be changed so suddenly. Did her father not approve of her marriage? Hundu quickly interrupted and insisted it was because of work. Miran chased him outside and asked her husband what he planned to do. Hundu wanted to visit his former mother-in-law first to explain the situation. That day, Bona reluctantly explained to her future mother-in-law that the meeting between the elders had to be postponed. Crystal didn't say anything on the surface, but she felt uneasy inside. She returned home with a disappointed expression, suspecting that her in-laws had reservations about them. To curry favor with her future mother-in-law, she asked her assistant to deliver a gift. As she was leaving, she happened to run into Miran. The assistant felt that she looked familiar, as if he had seen her somewhere before. After thinking carefully, he finally remembered that when the chairman had opposed the marriage, he had been asked to investigate Bona's mother. He then contacted his subordinate to have the original film developed. The next day, he reported the matter to the chairman. Crystal was confused. The assistant said that the two people in the photo were Bona's parents. Crystal was excited and asked the assistant to explain quickly. At that moment, Hundu had already arrived at the door. He decided to protect his daughter's happiness. After a standoff between the two sides, Crystal remembered that the photos from the investigation had been taken by her son, so she hadn't seen them. Even with the truth in front of her, she still refused to believe it. She couldn't face such a reality. As she made excuses to deceive herself, the doorbell suddenly rang. Kunam guessed it was her ex-son-in-law. He had just called and said he was coming over, so it must be about this matter. Crystal rushed out like a madwoman. When she saw it was her ex-son-in-law, she felt helpless. Crystal hoped the assistant had made a mistake. Hundu apologized and admitted that Bona was his daughter with his first wife. Crystal tried to stay calm. Given the current situation, the only option was for the children to break up. She helplessly urged Hundu to go back and explain everything to Bona and do his best to minimize the damage. As she spoke, she suddenly couldn't take the shock and fainted. At that moment, Dongwu arrived with his niece and Bona's relatives for a gathering. Later, everyone sat together flipping through photos. When they came across a photo of their vacation in Jeju Island, Siro immediately recognized Miran. She had seen her before at her father's apartment. Bona said, "That's my mother." Siro was surprised that her father's friend was her future aunt's mother, but her mother seemed to dislike this woman. Meanwhile, Crystal had been taken to the hospital. Due to the shock, she remained unconscious. Fortunately, there were no serious issues. Hundu begged his former father-in-law to keep the secret for now. He would find a way to convince everyone. Bona felt uneasy. She couldn't understand why her father kept postponing the meeting. Soon after, Hundu kneels on the ground and begs his ex-mother-in-law to let the children's love be. Crystal is helpless and wonders why this is happening. For Bona's happiness, Hundu decides to cut off all ties with his daughter. He will never appear in front of her again. He has already applied to be a medical aid worker in the Middle East. Crystal is torn. On one side is her son's beloved fiancé, and on the other is her adopted daughter's hated ex-husband. What can she do to minimize the damage? That day, Sunny deduced Bona's relationship with Hundu from a group photo. She then told Julie about it. Julie couldn't believe that that Bona was Miran's daughter. Meanwhile, Miran learned of her husband's decision. After being apart for 10 years, they had finally reconciled. Now they were being forced to break up again. As a mother, she was willing to sacrifice her own happiness, but she couldn't control her tears. Dongwoo brought the porridge his girlfriend had cooked to the hospital. He then praised his girlfriend to his mother. Crystal was deeply upset. She cautiously asked her son if he absolutely had to marry Bona. Dongwoo replied, "Of course." Seeing his son's happy expression, the father couldn't help but cry, saying, "I believe Julie and Dongwoo aren't biological siblings. Why must you make such a cruel choice?" Crystal's heart also wavers. The next day, she calls her former son-in-law to the hospital room. In the end, she agrees to the marriage. Julie, who is outside the door, never expected her mother to agree to this marriage. She rushes in like a madwoman and scolds her ex-husband for being shameless. She then blames her parents for being biased. At that moment, Dongwoo and Bona, who are unaware of what happened, are rehearsing their wedding at the church. Dongwoo solemnly promised that the two of them would stay together for the rest of their lives. The two lovers could only see each other. However, no matter how their parents tried to persuade her, Julie wouldn't listen. She swore to stop this marriage. Hundu hurried out to try to convince his ex-wife to let go of her hatred. He quickly contacted Miran and asked her to find a way to stop her daughter from meeting Julie. By the time Miran arrived at the noodle shop, it was already too late. Bona had already been called to the coffee shop by Miran. Julie got straight to the point and opposed her marriage to Dongwoo. As for the reason, she told her to ask her parents directly. Miran rushed over and tried to pull her daughter away. Bona refused. She wanted to hear Julie's reasons for opposing the marriage. Julie smiled triumphantly. She wanted to see the original wife in a difficult situation. Hundu also arrived shortly after. For his daughter's happiness, he wanted to bury the past. Julie called them over, saying she had something to say. She then revealed the truth. Bona couldn't believe it. She asked her father if it was true. Hundu quickly pushed her away. Miran was heartbroken. She confronted Julie, asking why she was so cruel. On the other side, Bona, who had been deeply hurt, was struggling to breathe. Her parents helped her to the apartment. After calming down, Bona held back her tears. She wouldn't blame anyone. She only blamed herself and Dongwoo for not being meant to be together. She didn't want her father to beg that woman for her sake. Hundu was too ashamed to face his daughter. He stood up and walked away. Miran cried and said she was sorry. It was her parents who had dragged her into this. Bona made an excuse to go to work. Soon after, Dongwoo confronted Bona about why they couldn't get married yet. Bona countered by asking him if his ex-brother-in-law's name was Hundu. Dongwoo confirmed it. Dongwoo couldn't understand how Bona knew the man's name. Recalling their previous chance encounters with his ex-brother-in-law, Dongwoo suddenly realized the truth. He never imagined that his ex-brother-in-law was Bona's father. Hundu finds Julie and asks her to agree to his daughter's marriage to her brother. Julie, however, is relentless. "Unless you divorce your wife and come back to me, don't even think about it." The absurd conversation is overheard by their parents. The entire family gathers together. They want to know her true thoughts. Julie doesn't hide her feelings. She did this to get revenge on them. Her words left everyone speechless. Crystal asked her, "Didn't you think about your brother's feelings?" Julie was consumed by hatred. She said that with her brother's conditions, he could find any girl he wanted. Her father countered, "Then why did you cling to Hundu so desperately? Is only your love precious?" Julie made various excuses. In short, she would never agree to this marriage. Miran also began to waver. No matter how she thought about it, it was impossible. Perhaps he should her to give up. Forcing her into marriage wouldn't bring her happiness. She knew Julie too well. She wouldn't let her daughter have an easy life. Hundu firmly opposed it. He had already owed Bona too much. He had to protect her happiness. After the shock, Dongwoo kept comforting his girlfriend. As long as they loved each other, there was no obstacle they couldn't overcome. The next day, she came to Dongwoo's house. Crystal genuinely likes Bona, but she can't stand seeing her children turn against each other. Sunny suddenly bursts in, claiming she has a way to make Julie compromise. Crystal tells her not to speak nonsense in front of the children. Dongwoo begs his mother to stand firm. He'll find a way to convince his sister. As they step out, they happen to encounter the other party. Julie refuses to communicate. No matter what they say, she won't change her mind. As Julie's biological mother, Sunny couldn't stand it anymore. She couldn't let her daughter live in hatred. If she knew the truth, perhaps she would regret it. But Crystal insisted on her own opinion. She was afraid that telling the truth would be too much for Julie to handle. But Sunny was determined not to continue indulging her daughter's selfishness. She asked Julie one last time if she could compromise for her brother, but Julie remained firm in her decision. On the day Hundu was supposed to have surgery, he unexpectedly appeared at the parking lot. Watching him drive away, Miran immediately called him but couldn't get through. Unable to rest easy, she decided to follow him. She soon spotted her husband's car. Looking up, she saw Julie as well. Hundu had brought Julie here to plead with her to agree to his daughter's marriage to her brother. For the sake of the children's happiness, he was willing to sever all ties with his daughter and leave Korea forever. Julie hated him for after returning to his first wife, she seized the opportunity to take revenge. Miran couldn't take it anymore and couldn't understand why Julie was being so extreme. Everyone was reflecting on their own mistakes. Only she had been selfish all along. Handu dragged his wife outside and scolded her for being too impulsive. On the other side, though Na understood her parents' hearts, she pushed Dongwoo's hand away and also felt that the two of them couldn't overcome this obstacle. Dongwoo believes that love can overcome all obstacles. He is angry that his girlfriend always backs down. In any case, they must not break up for any reason. After a late-night date, the two bid each other a reluctant farewell. They happened to run into Handu at the door. They then went to a cafe and poured out their hearts to each other. Handu stated that he would do anything to protect their love. Meanwhile, the considerate Bona had already decided to let go. Miran told her daughter not to worry. Bona is just afraid Dongwoo will be hurt. At a loss, Sunny finds Dongwoo and says she has a way to stop Julie from interfering in their marriage. Dongwoo is utterly shocked. He never imagined his sister was an adopted child. As Julie's biological mother, Sunny is determined to repay Dongwoo's parents for their kindness. She cannot let her daughter continue to act recklessly. This is a paternity test. Your mother was afraid Julie would be hurt and refused to reveal the truth. But I can't watch her keep making mistakes. Living in hatred will never bring happiness. Meanwhile, Miran found Julie and pleaded with her to agree to Bona's marriage to her brother. During the discussion, her brother called. Julie hung up impatiently. Little did she know that Dongwoo had just learned that his sister was adopted by his parents. He had the paternity test results in his hands. After a moment of hesitation, he left the documents in the car. Miran pleaded with Julie to let go of her hatred. She was willing to leave Korea with her husband and never appear before her again. Julie didn't know that Dongwoo was standing outside the door. She refused to give in, insisting she wouldn't forgive them. Dongwoo left angrily, holding the paternity test. He was torn. Should he expose Julie's true identity? That night, he invited her to a restaurant. He asked her if she remembered the accident from when they were children. If it weren't for her sister, he would have died. Could she save him again, just like she did back then? Julie softened and stayed at the restaurant alone until late at night. Back at the law firm, Dongwoo burned the paternity test. He believed his sister wouldn't be so heartless. After a night of thinking, Julie decided to give in, but she still couldn't forgive her ex-husband, so she approached him and agreed to the marriage. That there was one condition. She wanted Handu to leave Korea and go to Africa to practice medicine as previously suggested, but he had to go alone and never return. Handu reluctantly agreed to this absurd demand. All the mistakes were his fault, so he would go to a foreign country to atone for his sins with a guilty heart. Later, Julie gathered everyone together and announced that she agreed to the marriage. Sunny was overjoyed, thinking her daughter knew the truth about her origins. On the other side, Handu had already decided to go to Africa alone to practice medicine. He felt guilty toward Miran. In her sadness, Bona came over with a cake to celebrate. Finally, the marriage was approved. Miran felt it was unbelievable. That woman hates her so much. Regardless, she must congratulate her daughter. Handu is reluctant to leave but cannot bear to part with Sira. Sira has not seen her father in a long time. Julie promises her daughter that she will visit her father on the weekend. Sira is overjoyed. Sunny stands at the door and hears everything clearly. She has already guessed what happened. She angrily chases after them into the bedroom and accidentally knocks over the red wine. Julie does not think she did anything wrong. Sunny scolded her for interfering in someone else's marriage, saying she was in the wrong. Julie didn't understand why her aunt always took sides with others. The next day, Sunny made a difficult decision. She asked Julie to go with her to a place. Julie was curious about who she wanted to see. Sunny said they were going to meet the child she had abandoned. Julie was surprised but comforted her aunt, telling her not to be afraid. She said she would be there to speak for her. The two then arrived at a secluded tea house. Julie asked her aunt where her daughter was. Sunny had originally planned to never reveal it, that the other person had lived such an unfortunate life. She had done wrong and never repented. To seek revenge, she even pushed the man she deeply loved into a pit of despair. Then she pulled out a photo. Julie was confused. Wasn't this a photo of herself as a child? Sunny said, "My daughter was scarred on her arm in a fire." Through the photo and the scar, she could recognize her. Julie couldn't believe that Sunny was her biological mother. No matter how much Sunny cried and apologized, Julie couldn't hear her. After learning she was adopted, Julie broke down, but she chose to escape reality. She wanted to maintain the relationship she had with her biological mother and hoped she wouldn't mention her to others. Sunny didn't give up. She secretly vowed to teach her daughter how to be a good person. The next day, Miran found Julie and asked her to change her mind. Given Hundo's current physical condition, he couldn't go to such a harsh place. She promised to break up with him and never see him again. Julie was stubborn and refused to back down. She told Miran to choose between her daughter and her husband. Sunny witnessed the cruelty of her words. She walked over to Miran and said, "I'm sorry," on her daughter's behalf. Julie, selfish and unremorseful, showed no signs of regret. Sunny wanted to scold her daughter into seeing the truth. "Dongwoo knew you were an adopted sister but stopped me from telling you. The entire family was thinking of you." Yet Julie still tried to justify herself. That day, Bona was trying on her wedding dress. Her mother forced a smile. Her father was even stranger, carrying a camera and taking pictures non-stop. Only Miran knew the sacrifices her husband had made for this wedding. With the wedding approaching, Julie, torn inside, reminded herself not to regret it. Just then, she received a call from her ex-husband. The date for his departure had been set. He wanted to see Sira before he left. Sira was so excited that she threw herself into her father's arms. Hundu then pulled Julie aside. He took out the insurance policy he had applied for Sira. The amount wasn't much, but it was his heartfelt gesture. Julie reluctantly accepted it, reminding him to keep his promise. Once he went to Africa, he must never return. Hundu didn't blame Julie. He only hoped that Sira would understand. Even if he went far away, he would always think of her. The entire family was kept in the dark by Julie. They thought she had forgiven her ex-husband. The biological mother, who knew the truth, was anxious. She hoped Julie would give up her revenge. Otherwise, she would tell the adoptive parents. Julie wasn't afraid of threats. She said that at most she would get beaten up, but her brother's engagement ceremony might not go smoothly. The day of their separation was drawing near. Hundu bought his wife's favorite foods. Miran knows he has a weak stomach and prepares a box of medicine. She can't stop the tears from flowing. If she could start over, she wouldn't have divorced him out of spite. That day, Bona goes to an international medical center to discuss a business deal and happens to see her father coming out of the office. She rushes over, but misses the elevator. She wonders why her father is here. It should be his clinic hours. Bona is feeling down when she sees a poster at the door. Doctors wanted for Africa. Her father didn't answer his phone. Her mother was also vague, carefully recalling her parents' recent suspicious behavior. It seemed as if they were about to go on a long trip. Julie suddenly agreed to the marriage. Could it have something to do with her father? So she hurried to her father's hospital. At that moment, Hundu was not in his office. He was saying goodbye to the director. The director felt deeply regretful. If he was going for a short time, he was willing to keep his position for him. Hundu refused the offer. This parting would likely be permanent. Unexpectedly, Bona overheard everything. Bona was emotionally distraught. She didn't want her father to do this for her. Hundu explained that it was his own decision. His mind was made up. The engagement ceremony must proceed as planned tomorrow. The engagement banquet was set to begin the next day. However, Bona refused to get out of the car. Both families had arrived early at the scene. While waiting, Dongwoo entered alone. He said his fiancée wouldn't be coming. Hundu was extremely anxious. He knew exactly why his daughter was acting this way. He hurriedly ran out to find her. Dongwoo's parents, unaware of the situation, demanded an explanation from their son. Sunny could no longer contain herself and exposed her biological daughter's wicked deeds in front of everyone. Crystal never imagined her adopted daughter could be so selfish. Julie left in anger. She rushed across the street recklessly. A car came speeding toward her. In a moment of danger, Hundu risked his life to push her out of the way. Julie only suffered minor injuries. Hundu was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Bona received the news immediately and rushed to the hospital in a panic. Dongwoo blamed himself. Julie hid in the office, filled with regret. She finally realized how cruel her previous actions had been. Why did her ex-husband save her? What would she have done if he had died? Sunny urged her to go to the hospital. This might be your last chance to be forgiven. That man has always felt guilty toward you. That's why he risked his life to save you. Julie listened and burst into tears. Later, she went to the hospital, accompanied by her biological mother. Hundu's condition was not optimistic. He had not yet passed the critical stage. Julie thought she would be scolded by her husband's first wife. However, Miran was surprisingly forgiving. She understood her husband's heart. She did not want to blame anyone. She then took Julie to the intensive care unit. Julie slowly approached him, tears streaming down her face, and apologized. Under the calls of his family, Hundu finally responded and opened his eyes. But after a brief moment of consciousness, he fell back into a coma. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yunsu was struggling to make ends meet while raising his son. He was striving to be a responsible father. Julie came to pick someone up and happened to run into Miran. The past was long behind them. They greeted each other like ordinary friends. Sunny returned home from a vacation with her granddaughter. She was relieved that her daughter had finally grown up. She had also found a man who loved her. Dongwoo and Bona were happily married. Unexpectedly, his wife had been secretly taking birth control pills for her career. The two had the biggest argument since their marriage. Dongwoo ordered her to actively try to conceive that night, but Bona had to go on a business trip and couldn't comply. Hundu, who had narrowly escaped death, dedicated himself to public welfare. He shared his life insights on TV. There are no perfect partners in this world, only those who don't know how to cherish them. Cracks don't form overnight. They require both parties to nurture them with care. Crystal strongly agreed with this viewpoint. That morning, she had scolded her husband. Now she immediately called to make up. Dongwoo also watched his father-in-law's interview carefully. He deeply resonated with it. In this vast world, how lucky one must be to spend a lifetime together. He regretted losing his temper that morning. He rushed out of the law firm to go to the airport to see his wife off. At that moment, Bona was also reflecting and decided to cancel today's plans. Miran has been waiting in the parking lot for her husband to finish work. They have returned to the days when they supported and depended on each other. Dongwoo thought his wife had already left. He returned home disappointed. What awaited him was a huge surprise. Flowers and candles, and a beautiful, sexy wife. The film ends here. If you're interested, please like and follow us. See you next time.